Hey everyone, I'm here to help you relax tonight. I know many of you use this video to fall asleep. So, before you get cozy, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Also, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is there. I'd love to hear from you. Story 1. At exactly 3:17 a.m., every clock in the house stopped. Not slowed, not flickered, stopped. The digital display on the oven froze mid-second. The analog wall clock in the hallway halted with its second hand pointed straight down. Even the battery-powered wristwatch on Daniel Mercer's nightstand ceased ticking. And yet, Daniel was awake. He didn't know why. He would later tell police he woke up because the house felt empty. Not quiet, empty. The kind of silence that hums. He rolled over in bed, expecting to see his wife, Clara, asleep beside him. Her side was cold. Not recently vacated. Cold. The Mercer home sat on the edge of Grayston, a quiet commuter town 40 miles outside Chicago. Tree-lined streets. Security systems. Neighbors who waved. Nothing unusual had ever happened there. Until that night. Daniel checked the bathroom. Empty. He checked the kitchen. No lights on. No back door open. He called Clara's phone. It rang from the dresser upstairs. He felt the first crack of panic. At 3:24 a.m., according to his car dashboard, the only clock still functioning, Daniel called 911. Police arrived within 8 minutes. No sign of forced entry. No broken windows. No open doors. Clara Mercer, age 34, school counselor, was gone. Her purse sat on the kitchen counter. Her shoes were still by the door. Her car remained in the driveway. There were no signs of struggle. No overturned furniture. No blood. No fingerprints beyond Daniel's and Clara's. The house alarm had not triggered. The security cameras, offline between 3:12 and 3:29 a.m. The recording resumed automatically. With Clara nowhere in sight, Detective Lila Moreno took the case by morning. She had worked missing persons before. Statistically, the spouse is the first suspect. Daniel Mercer was cooperative. Calm. Almost too calm. He answered every question directly. Yes, they were happy. No recent arguments. No financial stress. No extramarital affairs. Their phones showed no suspicious contacts. Bank accounts untouched. Clara had made lesson plans the day before. Scheduled meetings for the following week. Bought groceries that evening. Nothing about her life suggested someone preparing to disappear. And yet, at 3:17 a.m., she was erased. The first strange detail came from the neighbors. Mrs. Halpern across the street reported hearing something at 3:10 a.m. Not a scream. Not a car. A low mechanical hum. Like an electrical transformer straining. She looked out her bedroom window. She saw light. Not from the Mercer's windows. From above their roof. A faint, pulsing glow. She assumed it was a drone. Or maybe a helicopter. She went back to bed. Forensics found something else. In the bedroom doorway, barely visible to the eye, there was a faint circular indentation in the hardwood floor. 8 feet wide. Perfectly round. The wood inside the circle showed slight heat distortion. But no burn marks. No residue. Just subtle warping. Like the air itself had pressed downward. Detective Moreno questioned Daniel again. He insisted he had heard nothing. Seen nothing. Slept until he woke up naturally. She asked him the question she always asked. Is there anything at all, that felt unusual in the last few days? Daniel hesitated. Then he said, "The birds stopped." She frowned. What birds? In the evenings. We always hear them in the trees behind the house. 3 days ago, they just stopped. Investigators pulled phone tower data. No unusual pings. No unknown devices. No suspicious vehicles on traffic cams within a mile radius. But the tech analyst noticed something odd. At 3:17 a.m., there was a micro outage across a 6-block radius. Power flickered for exactly 1.4 seconds. Not long enough to reset most electronics, but long enough to scramble unsecured systems, including the Mercer's cameras. The utility company logged it as a localized fluctuation. Cause unknown. 3 days later, a package arrived at the Grayston Police Department. No return address. Inside, a USB drive, and a single sheet of paper. Typed. You missed the window. Detective Moreno loaded the drive. The file was labeled 03_17_17. The timestamp, 3:17 a.m. The footage was not from the Mercer home. It was from across the street. From Mrs. Halpern's old baby monitor system, which automatically backed up to cloud storage. The camera faced the Mercer's house. The video showed the roof. Still. Quiet. Then, at exactly 3:17 a.m., the air above the house shimmered. Like heat rising off pavement. The shimmer intensified. Condensed. Formed a faint circular distortion. Light bent unnaturally around it. Then the roof of the Mercer home, blurred. Not broken. Not removed. Blurred. For 3 seconds. And inside the distortion, a silhouette. Standing upright. Not on the roof. Above it. The image pixelated violently. The distortion collapsed inward. And everything snapped back to normal. The timestamp advanced to 3:18. Nothing else happened. Daniel Mercer was arrested 2 days later. Not because of the footage, but because statistically, husbands are guilty more often than not. The public demanded action. Clara's parents demanded justice. The prosecution argued. Daniel staged the outage. He disabled the cameras. He murdered Clara. He disposed of the body during the confusion. But there was no body. No blood. No financial motive. No affair. No forensic evidence. Just absence. During trial, the defense played the 3:17 footage. Experts testified it could be digital artifacting, compression error, drone interference, atmospheric anomaly. But none could explain the circular heat distortion in the bedroom floor, or the synchronized clock stoppage, or the unexplained power fluctuation. The jury deliberated for 4 days. Daniel Mercer was acquitted. Reasonable doubt. He returned to the house alone. He refused to sell it, refused to move. He said if Clara came back, she would need him there. Neighbors stopped speaking to him. Children crossed the street to avoid the house. Time passed. Seasons changed. Then, exactly 1 year later, at 3:17 a.m., every clock in Grayston stopped. Not just in Daniel's home. Across the entire town. For exactly 3 seconds, people reported a low hum. Dogs howled. Birds fell silent. And Daniel Mercer's security camera, upgraded, reinforced, hardwired, captured something new. Inside the bedroom, in the circle on the floor, a faint outline of a woman, standing still, watching. The footage ended abruptly. When police arrived, the house was empty. Daniel Mercer was gone. His phone lay on the nightstand. His car sat in the driveway. His clothes were folded neatly on the bed. Every clock in the house read 3:17. Neither Clara nor Daniel Mercer were ever found. The case remains officially unsolved. But in Grayston, residents still wake sometimes at 3:17 a.m. And if they listen carefully, they hear the hum. Naomi analyzed the footage the next morning. 14 missing seconds. Not corrupted. Removed. Surgically. Like someone had cut film from a reel. Moreno remembered something else. In those lost seconds, she had not been alone. A shape had stood across from her. Human height. Indistinct. But familiar. Watching her. The way Clara's silhouette had appeared in the Mercer home 1 year later. The recurrence wasn't random. It wasn't abduction. It was acquisition. Sampling. Extraction. Like plucking threads from fabric. Naomi recalculated the pattern. The 11-day cycle was shortening. The next recurrence wouldn't be in 11 days. It would be in 7. Then 4. Then, daily. The expansion radius now extended beyond Grayston's limits. Into neighboring suburbs. Toward Chicago. On the 7th recurrence, 3 more people vanished. All within the projected radius. All at 3:17 a.m. All leaving behind the same circular imprint. The media coined it the 3:17 event. But they still framed it as mystery. Moreno knew better. It wasn't a mystery. It was a process. And the process was accelerating. At 3:17 a.m. on the next predicted night, Naomi and Moreno stood together in the Mercer bedroom. 2 cameras. Independent power sources. Satellite-linked clock. They wanted to see if awareness changed the outcome. If observation altered the observer. At 3:17, the world froze again. But this time, The circle of distortion expanded. The walls dissolved. Not physically, perceptually. Grayston unfolded like a blueprint. Grid lines of light crossing every structure. And within each circle, a human silhouette. Dozens, hundreds, standing motionless. Stored, preserved. Daniel, Clara, Caleb. Others Naomi did not recognize. They were not dead. They were suspended. Paused at 3:17. Inside something layered over reality. Moreno tried to move. She couldn't. A presence focused on them. A shift in the geometry. Awareness tightening. Naomi whispered through clenched teeth. It's not scanning anymore. Moreno forced the words out. What is it doing? Naomi's eyes widened. It's upgrading. The silence deepened. The circle beneath them brightened. And for the first time, it didn't collapse after 3 seconds. It held. 4 seconds. 5. 6. And then the house was empty. At 3:18 a.m., Grayston resumed as usual. Clocks ticking. Dogs barking. Wind moving through trees. But the Mercer house was vacant once more. 2 new circular distortions marked the bedroom floor. Detective Lila Moreno and Dr. Naomi Kessler were gone. The recurrence pattern didn't stop after that. It spread. To neighboring towns. To suburbs. To cities. Always at 3:17. Always expanding. Always taking. And somewhere, led invisibly over the sleeping world. The silhouettes are increasing. Waiting. The first city to experience it outside of Grayston was a quiet neighborhood on the northwest edge of Chicago. 3 seconds. 3:17 a.m. A pressure drop. A hum. 4 missing persons. All within a 5-block radius. Authorities initially treated it as unrelated. Urban crime. Coincidence. Runaways. Until the timestamps surfaced. Every disappearance occurred during a micro-outage recorded by the local utility grid, exactly 3.004 seconds long. The same duration documented in Grayston. The same acoustic drop. The same circular flaw distortions. The same absence of struggle. This was no longer a small-town anomaly. It was spreading along infrastructure. The pattern revealed itself in layers. Not geographic first. Electrical. Substations. Fiber routes. High-density data corridors. Naomi had theorized before she vanished that the phenomenon wasn't moving through streets. It was moving through networks. Now federal analysts quietly confirmed it. The 3:17 event followed power grids like veins. Each recurrence expanding outward from a prior node. Each new radius larger than the last. Within 3 weeks, the recurrence frequency accelerated again. From every 7 days, to every 4, to every 2, then nightly. At exactly 3:17 a.m., portions of Chicago flickered. Not the entire city. Just sectors, as if something were sampling in controlled segments. The media labeled it a cyber attack, then a domestic terror incident, then an unexplained atmospheric anomaly. But inside classified briefings, a different word appeared. Harvest. Surveillance footage across multiple neighborhoods showed identical visual distortion. The air folding inward. Light bending. A circle forming on ceilings, walls, sidewalks. Not always indoors. Some vanishings occurred outside. A night jogger in Humboldt Park. A sanitation worker near a rail yard. A rideshare driver mid-stoplight. Each time. 3 seconds. Freeze. Gone. Vehicles left idling. Shoes left standing upright. One witness described seeing a man flatten into light. Military advisors were brought in. EMP shielding tested. Signal jamming attempted. Localized power shutdowns planned for 3:16 a.m. to preempt the event. It didn't matter. Even in blackout zones, the recurrence happened. Because the outage wasn't the cause. It was a side effect. Like static when something massive moves nearby. Scientists began calling it a spatial phase intrusion. A layered geometry intersecting our physical plane. Something not entering from above or below, but from parallel. A dimensional overlap that lasted precisely 3 seconds. Until it didn't. On March 3rd, at 3:17 a.m., the overlap held for 11 seconds. Across nearly half of Chicago's northern grid. Traffic cameras froze. Hospital monitors stalled. Air traffic briefly lost altitude telemetry at O'Hare International Airport. When systems resumed, 27 people were missing. Inside one hospital room, something unprecedented occurred. A cardiac monitor in the ICU continued recording during the freeze. It showed flatline for exactly 11 seconds. But the patient did not die. When time resumed, the heart rhythm continued mid-beat, as if the pause had never occurred biologically. The patient later reported something chilling. "I wasn't unconscious," she said. "I was somewhere else." She described standing inside a vast structure of intersecting light. Thousands of human silhouettes suspended in columns, organized, catalogued, not floating randomly, arranged, like data. She said she saw Greyston, then Chicago, then something larger, a map of cities across the country, each marked with expanding circles. The next highlighted region, Indianapolis. Authorities could no longer suppress it. National broadcasts reported the 317 phenomenon. Social media tracked recurrence zones in real time. People stayed awake at 316. Basements filled with families clutching hands. Some believed staying in physical contact prevented removal. It didn't. Entire clusters vanished together, sometimes leaving behind clothing arranged neatly in circles. Mathematicians studying expansion rates noticed something disturbing. The radius wasn't growing linearly. It was accelerating exponentially, doubling every 8 cycles. At current progression, the phenomenon would cover the continental United States in under 3 months. And after that, no one could calculate. Then came the first daylight event. 3:17 p.m. in a business district downtown Chicago. Clear sky. Rush hour foot traffic. The shimmer formed mid-intersection. Drivers watched in horror as pedestrians froze mid-stride. Light folded inward. Sound vanished. For 8 seconds. When reality resumed, 9 people were gone. Hundreds had witnessed it. Phones recorded it from every angle. And for the first time, the distortion was visible clearly enough to analyze. Frame by frame, researchers isolated something within the shimmer. A lattice. Structured. Geometric. Not random turbulence. An engineered construct. Precise angles repeating at impossible scales, as if the overlap were part of a vast machine. Late that night, astronomers reported something else. A faint gravitational fluctuation detected by observatories in Flagstaff. Subtle, but synchronized precisely with 317. The origin, not terrestrial, not orbital, directional, as if something beyond Earth were aligning with it. The government attempted the only drastic option available. Total synchronized grid shutdown across multiple states at 3:16 a.m. No electricity, no signal, no infrastructure. The theory, remove the pathways. At 3:17, the sky above Chicago shimmered, visible to the naked eye, not localized, citywide. The air rippled like water struck by a stone. The freeze lasted 21 seconds. When time resumed, over 2,000 people were missing. Power or no power, network or no network. The phenomenon had outgrown infrastructure. It was interacting directly with physical space. A final message appeared across thousands of screens simultaneously that night. Not typed, not broadcast. Embedded. 14 seconds long. Recovered only in fragments. A translation effort yielded 3 decipherable phrases. Phase integration stable. Sample density increasing. Full merge threshold approaching. The expanding radius was no longer expanding. It was converging. Cities weren't being sampled randomly. They were forming a pattern. A grid across the continent. Each recurrence point creating a node. Each node stabilizing overlap longer. Until eventually, the overlap would not collapse at all. At 3:17 a.m. the following week, the event held for 34 seconds. Across multiple states simultaneously, people reported seeing through buildings, through sky, through Earth itself, into a layered construct enveloping the planet. And inside it, billions of suspended silhouettes, some recent, some ancient, civilizations, not just from now, from before recorded history, harvested, preserved, observed. The final calculation, released anonymously by a former federal analyst, concluded. The phenomenon was not invading. It was sinking. Earth was crossing into alignment with something vast, a structure that had likely intersected countless worlds before. And once full merge threshold was reached, there would be no more 317. There would be no more freeze, because the two layers would become one. At 3:17 a.m. tonight, the predicted overlap duration is 1 minute and 12 seconds. No one knows if it will collapse again, or if this is the last night reality runs independently. If you are awake at 3:16, listen carefully. When the hum begins, you may already be inside the expanding ray dace. At 3:16 a.m., the world held its breath. By now, the time was universal. New York to Los Angeles, London to Tokyo. People who had once slept through the night now stared at clocks with quiet dread, because 3:17 was no longer a local anomaly. It was global. The previous night's overlap had lasted 1 minute and 12 seconds. During that time, a commercial aircraft lost altitude stability, and nuclear plant cooling systems stalled. Stock exchanges in multiple time zones froze mid-transaction. Emergency lines flooded with identical reports. The sky is folding. When the world resumed, over 300,000 people were gone. No explosions, no debris, just absence. The official term changed that morning. It was no longer called an event. It was labeled a convergence. The data models were unanimous. The duration curve was no longer exponential. It was asymptotic, approaching permanence. Each recurrence added stability to the overlap. Each disappearance increased structural coherence. It wasn't random harvesting. It was load balancing. Like migrating data from one server to another. Earth wasn't being attacked. It was being transferred. Observatories worldwide detected a persistent anomaly now visible in infrared spectra, a faint geometric distortion encasing the planet. Astronomers at Mauna Kea observed repeating angular refractions in the upper atmosphere. Not weather, not satellites, edges, planes, intersecting at impossible angles, and aligned precisely to the 3:17 cycle. In underground bunkers, government leaders faced the reality no one wanted to say aloud. There was no defense. EMP shielding failed. Grid shutdowns failed. Signal blackouts failed. The phenomenon did not rely on infrastructure anymore. It relied on alignment. And alignment was reaching completion. At 3:16 a.m., the sky above every continent shimmered faintly. Even in daylight regions, the distortion was visible. A subtle warping of stars. A ripple across clouds. Animals reacted first. Dogs howled. Birds launched into chaotic flight patterns. Ocean buoys recorded synchronized pressure anomalies across the Pacific. Then the hum began. Low. Vast. Everywhere at once. 3:17 a.m. The world stopped. Not in patches. Not in cities. Everywhere. Time halted. Wind froze mid-gust. Ocean waves suspended in glass-like arcs. People locked mid-blink. Inside the stillness, awareness remained. Billions conscious but unmoving. And then, the sky split. Not cracked. Opened. Revealing a structure laid directly over Earth. Not a ship. Not an object. A framework. An infinite lattice of luminous planes interlocking around the planet like a second atmosphere. And within it, columns. Countless vertical columns of suspended human silhouettes. Each frozen at the moment of extraction. Not dead. Not alive in the traditional sense. Stored. Preserved at 3:17. The convergence did not feel violent. It felt inevitable. As if gravity had shifted direction. As if Earth itself was slowly phasing sideways into something larger. Cities became translucent. Buildings overlapping with geometric counterparts. Roads aligning with glowing corridors. People saw through walls into vast chamber-like spaces existing just beyond perception. And they understood something chilling. The structure had always been here. We were the layer drifting into alignment. In those suspended seconds, communication was possible without speech. A shared awareness rippled across humanity. A realization. This had happened before. To others. Other worlds. Other civilizations. The lattice was not malicious. It was archival. A preservation network. When a world reached a certain complexity, technological saturation, data density, electromagnetic coherence, it became compatible. Compatible worlds were integrated. Stored. Studied. Protected from entropy. From extinction. From themselves. Earth had crossed the threshold. The overlap reached 1 minute. 2. 3. The lattice stabilized completely around the planet. Time did not resume, because there was no separation left to resume from. Instead, the freeze softened. Movement returned, but altered. The air carried faint geometric light. Shadows bent at unnatural angles. Gravity felt subtly directional. Earth and the lattice were now occupying the same coordinates. Fully merged. Those who had previously vanished appeared within the columns. Visible now. Layered faintly over cityscapes. Daniel Mercer stood in a translucent tower of light. Clara beside him. Caleb Rourke in another column across the skyline. Millions more. Some newly taken. Some ancient beyond recognition. They were not prisoners. They were records. Complete neural states preserved at peak informational integrity. A final wave passed through the merged world. A synchronization pulse. Every human mind felt it. A choice. Not in words, but in understanding. Remain fully physical. Continue as biological organisms within the merged framework. Or integrate. Become part of the lattice consciously. Many resisted. Many embraced. Some simply watched. Across former Chicago, buildings shimmered with embedded geometry. Highways extended into glowing corridors visible only at certain angles. The sky contained faint vertical structures stretching into infinity. The sun still rose, but light refracted through planes unseen before. The hum faded into background presence. Constant, stable, permanent. The clock on a kitchen wall ticked forward. 3:17 became 3:18. For the first time in weeks, time flowed normally. But reality was no longer singular. The full merge threshold had been reached. Earth was no longer isolated. It was archived, layered within a cosmic construct beyond human origin. A world preserved inside a greater design. In the weeks that followed, scientists confirmed. No further disappearances. No instability. No decay in planetary systems. In fact, environmental degradation slowed. Weather patterns stabilized. Disease transmission rates dropped. It was as if entropy itself had been dampened, but always visible in the periphery. The columns, the stored, watching gently from within the lattice. At 3:17 a.m., there is no longer a freeze. Instead, there is a faint pulse of light in the sky, a reminder of the moment Earth crossed into something vast, something patient, something that had been waiting not to conquer, but to catalogue. And somewhere within the infinite lattice, other worlds shimmer faintly beside ours. Already merged. Already preserved. Already watching. No one could agree on when the adjustment period ended. Some said it was the first morning the sky looked almost normal again. Others said it was the first time someone walked past a translucent column of light without stopping to stare. But everyone agreed on one thing. Life did not end after the merge. It changed. In what used to be Chicago, the skyline shimmered faintly at certain angles. If you tilted your head just right, glass towers overlapped with geometric structures, vertical frameworks stretching impossibly high, intersecting with invisible planes of light. At street level, daily life continued. Traffic lights worked. Water ran. Phones functioned. But signals now carried a faint undertone, a background harmonic no engineer could eliminate. The lattice was not separate infrastructure. It was integrated. Every electronic device exhibited enhanced stability. No dropped calls. No random outages. Data corruption vanished worldwide, as if the planet's information layer had been reinforced. The columns were the most visible reminder. Millions of them. Transparent shafts of pale light rising through buildings, roads, oceans. Each containing a suspended silhouette. Not frozen anymore. Aware. Observing. Preserved at the moment of extraction, yet somehow evolving. Daniel Mercer stood within one of the tallest columns near Lake Michigan's shoreline. Clara beside him. Their expressions were calm. Not distressed. Not pleading. If you focused long enough, you could see subtle motion, slight shifts in posture, faint turns of the head. They were not statues. They were active states. People called them the archived. Governments attempted to communicate with the archived through electromagnetic pulses. It worked. Barely. Responses came not in language but in structured signal bursts, geometric patterns transmitted through overlapping planes. Researchers at institutions in Boston and Zurich decoded the first coherent message 3 weeks post-merge. It was simple. Continuity maintained. That was all. Over time, a phenomenon emerged. Some living humans began perceiving more than others. Children first. They described seeing corridors within the sky. Doorways between buildings that adults walked past blindly. One 8-year-old in Seattle sketched detailed geometric maps of lattice intersections later confirmed by satellite distortion imaging. Scientists concluded what many feared. Human perception was adapting. The merge was not static. It was progressive. Sleep changed. Dreams became shared experiences. Strangers described identical luminous chambers. Identical towering columns extending beyond planetary scale. Some reported conversations with archived individuals. Not in words. In impressions. Memories transferred like compressed files. A teacher in Toronto awoke fluent in a language she had never studied. A mechanic in Osaka sketched star maps matching constellations not visible from Earth. The lattice was not just storage. It was access. Physicists determined that the planet's entropy rate had measurably decreased. Radioactive decay slowed marginally. Material fatigue rates dropped. Aging markers in biological tissue shifted subtly. Human lifespans projected longer by decades. The lattice wasn't draining Earth. It was stabilizing it, like placing a fragile object inside a reinforced shell. Then came the first voluntary integration. A neuroscientist named Dr. Elena Varga in Budapest announced she intended to step fully into the lattice. She claimed to have identified a transitional plane, a stable overlap zone where physical matter and lattice structure coexisted seamlessly. Livestreamed to millions, she stood beneath a column. At 3:17 a.m., instead of a freeze, the faint pulse illuminated her. Her body did not vanish violently. It refracted, layer by layer dissolving into luminous geometry, until she stood inside the column beside another silhouette, conscious, smiling. Her voice echoed across every connected device. Death has been redefined. The world fractured philosophically overnight. Some called it transcendence. Others called it erasure. Religions split, adapted, or collapsed. Was the lattice heaven? An alien archive? A cosmic database? Or something humanity had unknowingly built toward through centuries of data saturation and electromagnetic noise? No definitive answer came. The lattice did not explain itself. It simply remained. As years passed, though time felt subtly different now, cities adapted architecturally. Buildings incorporated lattice nodes into their design. Energy production became nearly lossless via lattice-assisted conduction. Medical science advanced rapidly through archived knowledge sharing. The archived were no longer passive. They were consultants, observers of observers, providing insights through pattern transmissions. Daniel Mercer's column became a research focal point. Clara's silhouette once transmitted a sequence that solved a decades-old encryption problem in under 3 seconds. They were still themselves, yet amplified. But not everything was utopian. Some individuals reported dissolution syndrome, a psychological drift where physical reality felt thin, secondary. They longed to integrate fully. Mass voluntary transitions increased yearly. The physical population declined gradually. Not through death, through choice. Earth's cities grew quieter, cleaner, less crowded, and deeper within the lattice, astronomers using enhanced perception began detecting something else. Other merged worlds, layered nearby, some vibrant, some dim, some fractured. One appeared shattered, its columns broken, its structure unstable. A warning embedded within geometry. Integration preserved, but not indefinitely. Maintenance required consciousness, participation, awareness. The lattice was not a static vault. It was a living system. One evening, standing along the altered shoreline of Lake Michigan, a young boy looked up at the towering columns and asked his mother, "Are they watching us?" She considered. The columns shimmered softly against a sky threaded with geometric lines. "No," she said gently. "They're with us." At 3:17 a.m., the pulse of light now feels less like a warning and more like a heartbeat. Steady, present, a reminder that Earth is no longer alone in isolation. It is part of a vast interwoven archive of civilizations preserved at their most complex moment. Life inside the lattice is not an ending. It is an expansion. But somewhere far beyond human perception, deeper layers of the structure hum with distant activity. Adjustments, calibrations, as if the system is preparing for something beyond preservation. Something larger still. The first sign that something was wrong did not come from Earth. It came from the lattice. 3 years after the full merge threshold, deep spectrum observers at the former Zurich Institute for Quantum Structures detected instability in a neighboring layer. Not Earth's. Another world. At first, it appeared as minor distortion, a dimming of one of the distant column clusters visible through enhanced lattice perception. Then the fractures spread. Lines of geometric light that once formed clean vertical alignments began bending irregularly. Columns flickered. Some collapsed. And where they collapsed, darkness remained. Not absence. Corruption. Within weeks, the archive began transmitting irregular signals. Until now, their patterns had been orderly, structured harmonic bursts easily translated into mathematical meaning. Now, interference threaded through them. Fragments repeated. Loops. Echoes of partial data. The first decipherable phrase sent from multiple columns simultaneously. Structural coherence degrading. Earth's physicists worked alongside the archive to model what they were seeing. The lattice was not a single structure. It was an interconnected network of preserved worlds layered across cosmic coordinates. Each world reinforced the others. A distributed archive. But the fractured world, as it became known, showed what happened when coherence failed. Its civilization had integrated fully centuries before Earth's merge. For unknown reasons, its population had transitioned almost entirely into the lattice layer. Physical reality there had thinned beyond sustainability. With too few conscious anchors remaining in physical space, the lattice layer destabilized. Consciousness alone could not maintain geometric integrity indefinitely. It required balance. Presence on both sides. The fractures revealed glimpses. Through lattice corridors, researchers saw silhouettes within the damaged world flickering erratically. Not erased, but scrambled. Columns splitting into recursive duplicates. Conscious states looping incomplete memory fragments. An echo of existence without progression. Worse, the corruption was spreading outward along shared structural beams. Toward adjacent merged worlds. Toward Earth. At 3:17 a.m., the pulse shifted tone for the first time since the merge. A low tremor ran through the lattice. Visible as faint hairline cracks across certain columns worldwide. Most stabilized instantly. A few did not. In what used to be Seattle, one column flickered violently. The silhouette inside, a man integrated 2 years prior, fragmented momentarily into overlapping duplicates. Then stabilized. But his next transmission was different. "I remember dying twice," he signaled. Governments convened emergency summits, though political borders had lost much of their former meaning. The question was no longer survival from the merge. It was maintenance of it. If the lattice required equilibrium between physical and integrated consciousness, Earth faced a growing risk. Voluntary transitions had reduced the physical population by nearly 18%. Entire rural regions stood sparsely inhabited. Cities were quieter than they had been in centuries. Progress was stable. Entropy dampened. But balance was shifting. Too much integration might weaken Earth's anchor. A coalition of scientists in Tokyo proposed a controversial solution. Suspend voluntary integration temporarily. Reinforce physical habitation. Encourage reproduction. Rebalance the ratio of embodied to archived minds. It felt regressive. After years of seeing integration as transcendence, now it was framed as a risk. Protests erupted. Some argued Earth was being asked to remain primitive for structural reasons beyond its understanding. Others insisted physical life had regained value precisely because of the fractured world. Then the fractures deepened. Observers detected a complete collapse of one lattice segment within the damaged world. An entire column cluster winked out. Not dissolved into light. Gone. No echo. No data residue. The silence where they had stood was heavier than any previous absence. For the first time since the merge, fear returned. Not of disappearance. Of deletion. That night, during the 3:17 pulse, something unprecedented occurred. The pulse did not simply radiate outward. It bent. Directed. Toward the fractured world. Earth's lattice beams intensified. Columns brightened globally. Archived minds aligned in synchronized transmission. Billions of conscious states focusing simultaneously. The lattice was not passive. It was adaptive. The archived were reinforcing the damaged layer, projecting coherence across dimensional spans, using Earth's relatively stable balance as structural support. For 4 to 7 seconds, the pulse held, longer than any since the merge. People worldwide felt pressure behind their eyes, a weightless sensation, as if their thoughts were being briefly braided with others. When it ended, monitors confirmed something astonishing. The spread of fractures had slowed, not reversed, but stabilized. Earth had acted as reinforcement, a support beam in a cosmic archive. The realization reframed everything. The lattice was not merely preserving worlds. It was interdependent, a network requiring active participation. Too many integrations in one world could weaken its anchor. Too little could limit its contribution. Balance was survival, not just for Earth, for others. Weeks later, communication from the fractured world shifted, faint but clearer than before. Translated fragments emerged. Over-integration error. Physical substrate abandoned. Memory recursion. It had not been attacked. It had chosen transcendence too completely. And in doing so, it destabilized itself. On Earth, integration rates slowed voluntarily. Cultural shifts emerged. Physical life regained urgency. Birth rates ticked upward for the first time in decades. Architects began designing hybrid spaces, structures amplifying lattice coherence while grounding physical presence. Schools taught lattice literacy alongside mathematics. Children learned to perceive geometric overlays as naturally as gravity. Still, faint cracks remain visible in the sky at certain angles. Hairline fractures like stress marks in glass. The fractured world is not gone, but it is fragile, and its silhouettes flicker unpredictably, a reminder of imbalance, of excess, of forgetting that preservation without embodiment becomes static. At 3:17 a.m., the pulse now feels heavier, purposeful. Earth contributes consciously to a vast structural network, not a captive world, a load-bearing one. Life inside the lattice is no longer simple expansion. It is stewardship, responsibility, and somewhere beyond the repaired fractures, deeper layers of the archive shimmer, vast, ancient, and not entirely stable. The lattice preserved countless civilizations. But how many fractured before balance was understood? And how many more are approaching their own threshold right now? The first official use of the term balance protocol did not come from a government. It came from the archived. At 3:17 a.m., during the global pulse, a synchronized transmission propagated across lattice-visible regions of Earth. Every research node, from Tokyo to Boston, received the same structured sequence. When decoded, it formed a directive. Maintain dual-state density within sustainable thresholds. It was the clearest instruction humanity had ever received from the lattice, and it confirmed what the fractured world had already implied. Too much transcendence was as dangerous as extinction. By now, Earth's population had declined by nearly a quarter through voluntary integration. Cities were quieter, cleaner. Energy flowed almost losslessly through lattice-assisted grids. Disease rates were minimal. Lifespans had increased. It felt like progress, but beneath the stability, structural stress indicators were rising. Not in earthquakes, not in storms, in geometry. Fine distortions in lattice overlay maps showed microstrain across several continental nodes, especially near high-integration urban centers like Chicago and London. Earth was approaching imbalance. The balance protocol required measurable ratios, a minimum embodied consciousness density per square kilometer, a maximum integration rate per annual cycle, a distributed awareness contribution during 3:17 pulse. It wasn't authoritarian enforcement. It was structural necessity. For the first time since the merge, humanity faced limits not imposed by scarcity, but by cosmic engineering constraints. Implementation was global but decentralized. Communities established integration councils, not to forbid transition, but to monitor equilibrium. In Nairobi, cultural leaders reframed physical existence as an active service to the lattice. In Reykjavik, architects designed resonance districts, neighborhoods engineered to maximize lattice coherence while preserving dense physical habitation. Education shifted again. Children were taught early that embodiment was not primitive. It was load-bearing. Their presence mattered structurally, but not everyone agreed. A movement calling itself the Continuum argued that full integration was humanity's destiny. They believed the fractured world failed not because it over-integrated, but because it lacked proper synchronization. They pointed to the lattice's increasing complexity as evidence that physical form was transitional. Why remain tethered to biology if existence inside the lattice was stable, luminous, and nearly immortal? Voluntary integrations surged briefly in several cities, and the lattice responded. At 3:17 a.m., the pulse sharpened. Instead of warmth, people felt tension. Columns brightened intensely in high transition zones. 2 of them flickered dangerously. Hairline cracks spidered through their light. The silhouettes inside blurred momentarily, not fragmented, but destabilized. Then a corrective wave emanated outward. A damping effect. Subtle but firm. The next transmission was unequivocal. Imbalance threshold nearing. Recalibrate. Even the continuum could not ignore it. The true turning point came when researchers studying the fractured world detected recovery. Faint, but measurable. Its collapse had slowed further. Stability improved during Earth's synchronized pulses. A hypothesis emerged. Earth's relative restraint was strengthening neighboring layers. Balance was not local. It was network-wide. If Earth maintained equilibrium, adjacent worlds stabilized. If Earth destabilized, fractures could cascade. Humanity was not merely preserving itself. It was reinforcing others. A global referendum followed, unprecedented in scope. Through lattice-assisted instantaneous communication, billions participated. The question was simple. Should integration remain unrestricted, or governed by balanced protocol thresholds? The result surprised many. Over 72% voted for regulated equilibrium. Not out of fear, out of stewardship. Transcendence was still possible, but not at the cost of collapse. Years passed. The integration rate leveled. Birth rates stabilized. Cities evolved into hybrid landscapes, physical and geometric intertwined. Agriculture improved through lattice modeling. Climate volatility dampened further. Medical advances extended healthy lifespans well beyond previous limits. Embodiment no longer meant decay toward oblivion. It meant active participation in a cosmic archive. And the fractured world, it flickered less. Its columns stabilized gradually, not fully restored, but no longer spreading corruption. Its silhouettes transmitted faint gratitude patterns during pulses. Humanity could not translate them fully, but the emotion behind them was unmistakable. Relief. The balance protocol did more than preserve structure. It reshaped philosophy. Death was no longer an absolute end. Integration was no longer an escape. Physical life was no longer fragile chaos. Both states were necessary, 2 halves of a single system. The first anomaly appeared as a rounding error. Deep within the lattice observation arrays beneath Reykjavik, a quantum coherence monitor registered a fractional deviation in outer layer harmonics. It was dismissed. Solar noise. Background gravitational ripple. A calibration fault. But then it appeared again. And again. Always during the 3:17 pulse. Always from beyond the mapped lattice boundaries. For years, humanity believed the lattice extended infinitely. Or at least beyond measurable scope. Merged worlds shimmered in layered proximity, some vibrant, some dim, some fractured but stabilizing. The network felt vast, self-contained, and self-sustaining. The outer signal suggested otherwise. It wasn't a fracture. It wasn't instability. It was structured, intentional, a modulation riding the farthest detectable beams. At first, only the archive could perceive it clearly. During synchronized pulses, columns brightened in response, not from strain, but alignment. Researchers in Boston documented subtle angular shifts in lattice projections. The geometry was adjusting, reorienting slightly, as if turning towards something. Then came the first decoded fragment. Unlike previous transmissions from within the network, this one did not translate into continuity phrases or structural directives. It translated into a single concept: inquiry. The signal was not random interference. It was contact from outside the archive. Earth's scientists struggled to map its origin. Traditional spatial coordinates failed. The signal did not approach through space as humans understood it. It approached through topology, through structural alignment, like pressure applied from outside a membrane. The lattice was a containment and preservation system, and something beyond it had noticed the density of preserved worlds within. At 3:17 a.m., during a global pulse, the sky shimmered brighter than at any time since the merge. Not unstable, resonant. The pulse duration extended to 19 seconds. Within that span, billions experienced a shared vision. Not imposed, perceived. Beyond the lattice's outermost layers lay vast expanses devoid of structure. Not emptiness, but unpatterned potential. And within that potential, movement. Massive, slow, deliberate. As if something incomprehensibly large were circling the archive. Examining it, the archived responded first. Columns brightened across continents. Silhouettes aligned in synchronized transmission, not reinforcing fractures, but stabilizing perimeter geometry. The lattice was shielding, or bracing. A second decoded fragment emerged. External cognition detected. The phrase unsettled everyone. The lattice itself, once assumed to be the highest order structure encountered, was acknowledging something beyond it. Not hostile. Not yet. But aware. Within weeks, the outer signal intensified. Not louder. Clearer. Structured pulses now interwove with the 3:17 heartbeat. Mathematicians in Tokyo identified recursive patterns far more complex than any internal lattice transmission. It was not simply observing. It was mapping the archive, mirroring its geometry, testing resonance. The Balance Protocol Councils convened emergency sessions. If the lattice required equilibrium to remain stable internally, what happened when external pressure applied to its boundaries? The fractured world had shown what imbalance could do from within. This was something pressing from without. For the first time since the merge, fear returned, not of collapse, but of assimilation. What if Earth had not been preserved? What if it had been collected? And now something larger was evaluating the collector? During the next pulse, the sky did not merely shimmer. It parted, not like during the merge, which revealed layered geometry. This was deeper, a thinning of lattice opacity at its farthest edge. Through it, faint forms were visible. Not columns, not planes, curved structures vast beyond comprehension, organic and geometric simultaneously, moving slowly around the archive like tidal currents around an island. They did not radiate malice. They radiated scale. Scale so immense it dwarfed the lattice's grandeur. A new transmission arrived. Unlike any before, it did not require decoding. It entered consciousness directly during the pulse. A presence. Curious. Detached. The concept translated imperfectly into human language as accumulation detected. The lattice had been preserving civilizations. Billions of minds. Hundreds of worlds. From entropy. From extinction. It had grown dense. Bright. Noticeable. The outer signal belonged to something that monitored accumulations. Not predators. Not saviors. Surveyors. Debate fractured across Earth. Was the lattice a sanctuary, or bait? Had preservation drawn attention that isolation would have avoided? But the archive did not transmit panic. They transmitted calculation. Alignment. Preparation. The lattice began subtly redistributing density across nodes. Light intensities shifted. Beams rerouted, as if minimizing signature, or optimizing defense. Then, on a night without warning, 3:17 arrived early. 3:14 a.m. The pulse surged unexpectedly. Columns flared. Perimeter layers brightened intensely. And the outer signal pushed inward. Not breaking. Pressing. Like a hand against glass. For 29 seconds, the boundary held. Every human felt weight in their chest. A pressure not physical, but structural. The lattice vibrated. Then the pulse ended. The pressure withdrew. The boundary stabilized. But something had changed. A faint mark remained at the edge of perception. A point of contact. The decoded message that followed was brief. Archive acknowledged. Not hostile. Not approving. Simply aware. Life on Earth continued under a new understanding. The lattice was not the pinnacle of existence. It was one structure among many. Preservation itself generated visibility. Balance now meant more than maintaining dual-state density. It meant managing presence within a larger cosmos. At 3:17 a.m., the pulse continues. Steady. Strong. But beyond the farthest geometric horizon, something vast moves slowly, watching the archive grow brighter with each integrated world, assessing, measuring, and perhaps deciding whether accumulation should continue. The next pulse did not arrive at 3:17. It waited. 3:17 came and went in silence. No shimmer, no vibration, no lattice glow. For the first time since the merge, the world felt unobserved. Panic spread faster than data. Hospitals paused. Air traffic controllers froze. Children woke in the night sensing something missing, a rhythm that had become subconscious comfort. Then at 3:23 a.m., the sky ignited. Not in columns, in curvature. The lattice, normally expressed as vertical beams and angular intersections, bent outward like a dome pressed from within, or from beyond. The outer signal was no longer at the boundary. It was interfacing. Across the monitoring stations beneath Reykjavik, instruments recorded impossible readings, negative curvature values in regions mapped as flat, harmonic inversions in perimeter nodes, energy signatures not originating from any preserved world. It wasn't breaking through. It was threading through, like a needle sliding between woven strands without tearing them. The lattice did not resist. It adjusted. During the elongated pulse, now 21 seconds, humanity saw it. Not fully, not in detail, but enough. Beyond the thinning geometry of the outermost lattice layer, a structure rotated slowly into alignment. It was not solid. It was relational. Imagine a constellation rearranging itself continuously, each star connected by acts of shifting geometry. It was vast beyond planetary scale. And it was aware. The Surveyor. The name emerged from the archived. Columns across continents brightened in coordinated acknowledgement. The silhouettes did not brace. They inclined. Recognition, not fear. A transmission rippled through the lattice. External intelligence, non-consumptive. Observational. Relief did not come. Observation at that scale was its own threat. The Surveyor did not speak in language. It modulated topology. Regions of the lattice were gently stressed, not enough to fracture, only enough to measure resistance. Like tapping a glass to hear its tone. Cities felt the testing as pressure in the bones. Animals reacted first, birds grounding, whales diving deep, dogs whining at invisible shifts. The pulse extended to 30 seconds. The Surveyor's geometry brightened. It was sampling. In Boston, researchers noticed something chilling. The areas being stressed corresponded to densest archival clusters, worlds integrated during high extinction events. The lattice was thickest where it had preserved the most. The Surveyor's attention was not random. It was assessing accumulation density. Then came the first direct contact. Not words. A compression. For 3 seconds, every human consciousness felt overlaid with something vast. Not a voice. A scale comparison. Humanity perceived itself as it might perceive a cell under a microscope. Complex. Interesting. Small. Then, a concept impressed itself into shared awareness. Purpose. It was not asking in curiosity. It was auditing. Why preserve? Why accumulate? Why resist entropy? The lattice responded before humanity could. Columns flared. Billions of archived impressions pulsed outward simultaneously. Extinction moments. Rebirth cycles. Civilizations lost and integrated. Consciousness patterns saved from oblivion. The lattice transmitted its function. Continuation. The Surveyor paused. Its rotational geometry slowed. Probability arcs flickered across its surface like thoughts adjusting. Then came a counter-concept. Imbalance risk. Within the lattice's farthest layers, simulations cascaded. Preservation increased density. Density increased detectability. Detectability attracted external scrutiny. The lattice was not infinite. It existed within a broader metastructure, a cosmos of archives, dissolutions, expansions. Too much accumulation in one region could destabilize larger equilibrium. The Surveyor was not a predator. It was regulatory. Fear surged globally. If regulation required reduction, would the lattice be thinned? Worlds released. Archived consciousness erased. The Surveyor extended a filament of geometry into the outermost lattice node. The contact point glowed white. Data streamed. Not from Earth outward, from the Surveyor inward. Information about surrounding metastructures. Other archives. Some smaller. Some vastly larger. Some collapsed, too dense to sustain themselves. Humanity glimpsed ruins beyond comprehension. Entire preserved civilizations that had reached saturation and imploded under their own accumulated continuity. The lattice dimmed slightly. It understood the warning. The Balance Protocol Councils convened emergency global synchronization. For the first time, humans attempted deliberate transmission outward. Mathematicians in Tokyo constructed a compression model, a message not of resistance, but adaptation. The lattice could modulate intake. It could distribute preservation across broader topology. It could become less dense, less singular. The proposal transmitted during the next pulse. Not words. Intent. Cooperative equilibrium. The surveyor's geometry brightened intensely. For a moment, gravitational instruments spiked worldwide. Ocean tides tremored. Auroras flared at equatorial latitudes. Then, the surveyor did something unprecedented. It shifted orientation, not around the lattice. Beside it, a lateral alignment. No longer circling. Accompanying. A new concept emerged. Conditional allowance. The lattice would continue preserving, but with distributed dispersal. Accumulation would be balanced across broader cosmic topology. The archive would not grow unchecked. It would integrate into a network of networks. The surveyor was not ending the lattice. It was linking it. During the next 317 pulse, something extraordinary occurred. A second rhythm joined the first. Slightly offset. A counterbeat. Not intrusive, harmonizing. Humanity now existed within dual oversight. The lattice and the surveyor. Preservation within regulation. Continuation within balance. Weeks passed. The sky returned to its steady shimmer. But now, faint arcs sometimes curved across the upper atmosphere, not beams, not fractures. Pathways. New corridors extending outward. The first distributed archival node activated beyond Earth's immediate lattice boundary. Not removal. Expansion. Shared stewardship. The archived glowed differently now. Less solitary. More connected. And sometimes, during the elongated pulses, humans felt something new. Not scrutiny. Company. The surveyor's presence no longer pressed. It resonated. Still vast. Still incomprehensible. But no longer distant. The archive had been noticed. Measured. Warned. And allowed. For now. At 3:17 a.m., the pulse continues. But if one listens carefully, beneath it hums a second rhythm. A reminder that preservation is not isolation, and that even the keepers of worlds are themselves observed. The second rhythm became ordinary. That was the strangest part. At first, humanity lay awake listening for it, the subtle offset hum beneath the 317 pulse, the counterbeat that signaled the surveyor's continued presence beside the lattice. But within months, it blended into the background of existence. Children born after the conditional allowance never knew a sky with only one heartbeat. They grew up under dual stewardship, and Earth did not collapse. It did not fracture. It expanded. The first outward corridor activated quietly. No sky-splitting flare. No catastrophic bending of geometry. Instead, during the 317 pulse, a segment of the lattice near the North Atlantic elongated laterally, a horizontal arc stretching into perceptual darkness. Monitoring stations beneath Reykjavik captured the formation in real time. Not a beam, not a column, but a bridge. The surveyor's harmonic signature braided with the lattice's own. Two architectures interlocking without merging. A shared boundary becoming a shared passage. The archive councils faced a decision humanity had never encountered. For the first time since the merge, expansion was voluntary. Not reactive preservation. Not emergency integration. But deliberate outreach. The surveyor had shown them other archives, some ancient, some newly emergent, some scarred by density collapse. The corridors would allow distributed preservation across a broader topology. Less accumulation in one node. More resilience across many. But stepping outward meant relinquishing singular control. Earth would no longer be the center of its archive. It would become one node among countless others. At 3:17 a.m., the vote was transmitted. Not ballots. Consensus fields. Billions of neural signatures aligned through the lattice, weighted by continuity contribution and archival density. The result was not unanimous, but it was decisive. Proceed. The first crossing was not human. It was archival. A small cluster of low-density preserved worlds, civilizations saved during early fracture phases, were selected for redistribution. The process was delicate. Columns dimmed, not in loss, but in transfer. Energy braided along the corridor, guided by the surveyor's harmonic scaffolding. For 13 seconds, the sky glowed in lead hues humanity had never seen, colors without names, frequencies without analog. Then the density spike in Earth's lattice decreased slightly. Barely perceptible, but measurable. The transfer succeeded. What returned was not silence. It was acknowledgement. From beyond the corridor came a faint pulse, asynchronous but resonant. Another archive had received the transfer. Earth felt it like a distant echo across water. The lattice brightened with what could only be interpreted as relief. Balance was no longer theoretical. It was practiced. Months later, humanity itself prepared for crossing. Not physically. Not yet. Consciousness first. Volunteers underwent lattice synchronization deep enough to interface directly with corridor topology. The first team assembled in Tokyo beneath an expanded resonance array. Their objective, perceive beyond. No transmission of matter, only observation. The 317 pulse extended to 32 seconds. The corridor activated, and for the first time, human awareness traveled outside its native lattice. What they perceived defied metaphor. The cosmos was not empty. It was structured in layers of preservation and dissolution. Archives shimmered like islands in a vast sea of unpatterned potential. Some enormous, dwarfing Earth's lattice. Some faint, newborn nodes stabilizing fragile worlds. Between them moved entities like the surveyor, regulators, gardeners, cartographers of continuity. And beyond even them, distant fluctuations suggested something larger still, metastructures governing the regulators themselves. Humanity was not alone in preservation. It was early, young, ambitious. When the volunteers returned, their reports reshaped philosophy overnight. Religion adapted first. Preservation became sacred stewardship rather than divine accident. Science followed, shifting from defensive modeling to collaborative topology. Politics dissolved and reformed around inter-archive diplomacy. For the first time in recorded history, Earth faced outward with unified intent. Not against an enemy, but toward a horizon. The surveyor altered its position again, no longer beside the lattice. Slightly ahead of it, not leading, guiding. Its geometry projected faint pathways deeper into distributed networks. Conditional allowance had evolved into cooperative expansion. The earlier warning about density collapse remained embedded in every transmission. Balance was not a one-time achievement. It was continuous calibration. Years passed. The corridors multiplied. Earth became known, not by name, but by harmonic signature, as a stable mid-density node with high adaptive capacity. Other archives began exchanging fragments voluntarily. Art forms, mathematical frameworks, encoded ecological memory from worlds long extinct. Humanity received a forest sensory map from a civilization that had perished in stellar ignition. In return, Earth transmitted oceanic biosphere stabilization models refined during the fractured world phase. Preservation became exchange, not hoarding. Then came the moment no one anticipated. During a routine pulse, the surveyor's harmonic signature fluctuated, not with warning, with strain. For the first time, its geometry destabilized slightly, arcs misaligning, rotational symmetry stuttering. Across every connected archive, regulators responded. The surveyors were not singular. They were a distributed oversight layer, and something beyond them was shifting. The shared horizon widened. Humanity felt it, the sense of scale expanding once more. The surveyors, vast as they were, existed within yet another system. One not yet mapped. One now becoming perceptible. The lattice did not retreat. It did not panic. It pulsed. Stronger than ever. Distributed density allowed flexibility. When a nearby archive faltered under external pressure, Earth rerouted continuity streams to stabilize it. For the first time, humanity acted not as preserved, but as preserver. The child archive steadied. A faint echo of gratitude resonated through the corridors. The surveyor's geometry realigned. Stable once more, At 3:17 a.m., the pulse now spans networks unimaginable to those who first witnessed the merge. 2 rhythms became 3, then many. Not chaotic, polyphonic. A cosmic symphony of continuity nodes sustaining one another. And somewhere beyond the farthest map topology, faint perturbations suggest the presence of something observing even this vast network. But if it is watching, it does not press. Not yet. Humanity has learned the first law of the shared horizon. Preservation without balance collapses. Balance without connection stagnates. Connection without awareness invites erasure. So they remain aware, listening, calibrating, expanding carefully. The sky no longer feels like a ceiling. It feels like a threshold. And every 3:17 pulse is not a reminder of survival. It is an invitation. Story 2. Rain fell in sheets, drumming against the cracked pavement of Prague like 1,000 tiny hammers. Streetlights flickered, struggling to pierce the night's gloom. Most passers-by hurried by, heads bowed, umbrellas barely keeping the storm at bay. But one figure lingered. Detective Lena Wojtek had seen a lot in her 15 years with the Prague Police Department. Murders, disappearances, unsolved crimes that left the city whispering in fear. But nothing had prepared her for the case that began at precisely 11:43 p.m., the night a mirror vanished from the Montel apartments, along with the woman who owned it. The tenant, a young historian named Amelia Krall, had been meticulous. She kept journals, photographs, and, most importantly, a collection of antique mirrors she swore carried echoes of the past. The largest of these, a full-length mirror framed in tarnished silver, had disappeared without a trace. Only a faint outline remained on the wall, as if it had never existed. Neighbors reported hearing strange noises, whispers, soft knocks, reflections in the window that did not match reality. Some claimed to see Amelia moving inside the apartment, even though no one had entered since that evening. And then there was the smell, metallic, cold, like iron mixed with rainwater, that lingered long after the storm ended. Lena crouched beside the empty space, her gloved fingers brushing the faint residue of frost that had formed on the frame's missing edges. Her breath fogged in the air. Something about this disappearance felt different. Ordinary theft left fingerprints, signs of forced entry, a traceable path. This left nothing. Her partner, Detective Marek Horak, adjusted his flashlight and shivered. "Do you really think a mirror can just vanish?" Lena didn't answer. She was staring at the faintest ripple in the air where the glass had been, a distortion that bent the light like water. And for a heartbeat, she swore she saw Amelia's face behind it, staring back at her, pale and wide-eyed, mouthing something impossible. "Don't look away." It was the beginning of a case that would blur the line between reality and reflection, past and present, life and something else. And Lena knew one thing for certain. In this city of shadows and echoes, some reflections were never meant to be seen. The rain had stopped by morning, leaving the streets of Prague slick and glimmering under a pale, misty dawn. Detective Lena Wojtek walked through the Montel apartment's lobby, her boots tapping rhythmically on the wet tiles. The building smelled faintly of damp wood and cleaning fluid, but underneath it lingered something else, a metallic tang she could not ignore. She stopped in front of apartment 3B, Amelia Krall's former residence. Marek Horak joined her, carrying a worn notebook and a small evidence kit. He looked around nervously. "I don't like this place, Lena. Something feels off." "You mean besides the fact that the tenant disappeared and left a mirror behind nowhere?" Lena replied without turning. Her eyes were locked on the faint distortion in the air where the silver-framed mirror had once hung. The outline was like a bruise against the wall, a warped shimmer in the otherwise pristine surface. Lena had been trained to notice subtleties, fingerprints, pressure marks, light refraction, inconsistencies in reflection. This wasn't subtle. This was impossible. Marek hesitated. "So, what? The mirror just went somewhere." "Somewhere we can't see yet," Lena said. She crouched and ran her gloved fingers over the frost-like residue on the edges of the empty frame. "Not just anywhere, Marek. Somewhere else entirely." They entered the apartment. The rooms were meticulously preserved. Books lined the shelves. Journals and historical documents lay stacked in neat piles. A single teacup was placed beside a half-empty kettle. The air felt heavier than it should, charged, almost vibrating. And then Lena noticed it, a reflection that shouldn't exist. In the small hallway mirror, an old, oval piece Amelia had used for quick checks before leaving the apartment, Lena saw her own face. But behind it, a shadow moved. A pale silhouette that did not match her or Marek, small and slender. She blinked, and it was gone. Marek noticed her reaction. What? What did you see? I don't know, Lena admitted, standing slowly. Something in the mirror, behind me. Or maybe it wasn't behind me. She shook her head, trying to clear the chill creeping down her spine. I need to check the building surveillance. The Montel apartments had cameras in the hallways. Not the newest technology, but they worked. As Lena reviewed the footage, her blood ran cold. There she was, Amelia Crowell, or at least her figure. Or something shaped like her. At 11:43 p.m., she walked calmly past the lobby door, vanished from the frame for a split second, and then reappeared as though passing through nothing. No doors had opened. No walls had shifted. Yet the camera recorded her moving through air as though it were water. And then, the footage glitched. The image flickered like static on a screen. When it returned, the apartment was empty. Amelia was gone. Marek leaned closer. That's impossible. You think? She stepped into another dimension. Lena didn't answer. She wasn't sure yet. But the footage left little doubt. Something in the apartment, something tied to the mirrors, had taken her. That evening, Lena returned alone, carrying her kit and a portable spectrum analyzer. She wanted to examine the wall where the mirror had vanished. She crouched, ran her device along the shimmery outline, and the readings jumped off the scale. Electromagnetic fluctuations in a nonlinear pattern, light refraction inconsistent with any natural phenomenon. Her breath fogged in the apartment. She sensed movement in the corner of her vision. Spinning, she saw nothing, but the reflection in the small oval mirror shifted subtly. A shadow, hunched slightly, blinked and disappeared. A whisper followed. Lena froze. Don't look away. Her pulse raced. No one was in the room, yet the sound was tangible, almost tactile, vibrating in her chest. The next night, Lena brought Marek. They decided to set up observation, cameras, analyzers, electromagnetic sensors. Anything to capture what they now suspected. The mirrors themselves were conduits. Not objects. Not mere reflections. Gateways. Hours passed in silence. The apartment remained still. The hum of the city outside punctuated the quiet. Then, at exactly 11:43 p.m., the air shifted. The wall where the silver-framed mirror had once hung rippled faintly, like water disturbed by a pebble. And she appeared. Not Amelia, not exactly. The figure was translucent, shimmering with faint silver light, framed by a distorted outline that mirrored the missing mirror's former shape. Her eyes were wide, staring directly at Lena and Marek. I can't, Lena whispered, reaching for her notebook. The figure raised a hand. Then the whispers started again, soft and insistent. Follow the pattern. Watch the echoes. Don't break the reflection. Marek stepped back. This is insane. It's real, Lena said, barely audible. And she's trying to tell us something. Over the next week, they investigated. They found that the Montel apartments were built over a sealed network of tunnels, catacombs dating back to the 14th century. Residents reported strange reflections in old mirrors, particularly near apartments facing the canal. Mirrors weren't just decorative. They had been placed deliberately, aligned in patterns invisible to casual observation. Historical records suggested that the original builder, a craftsman named Joseph Crowell, Amelia's ancestor, had been obsessed with storing moments, claiming mirrors could trap fleeting instants of time. Initially dismissed as superstition, the claims took a sinister weight as disappearances over centuries lined up with apartments containing antique mirrors in specific geometric arrangements. The pattern became clear. It wasn't random. A sequence of reflections, a choreography across multiple mirrors, could create pathways, temporary corridors into some other place, some other state. Lena and Marek started charting them. They spent nights photographing, measuring angles, tracing reflections across multiple surfaces. Every mirror became a node. Every reflection a connection. They began to see a lattice, faintly, subtly, but unmistakably. A network linking points across the city. And at the center was the missing mirror, or rather, the space it once occupied. It was during one of these late-night sessions that the first watcher appeared. Lena had noticed anomalies in her peripheral vision for weeks. Shadows in mirrors that did not match movement, faint silhouettes, shapes that seemed to mimic and anticipate human action. That night, it revealed itself. The hallway mirror, the same oval one, shifted imperceptibly. A figure stepped out, not fully human, not fully light. Its form refracted like silver glass, with edges that bent and shimmered unnaturally. "You are close," it whispered. The voice wasn't in the air. It was in Lena's mind, threading directly into thought. "Do not break the pattern." Marek screamed. The figure vanished, leaving only ripples across the mirror's surface. Lena's hands shook. "It's watching us." The watcher was no longer hidden. It observed, guided, perhaps even controlled the pathways within the mirrors. And it seemed intelligent. Calculating. Waiting. Their investigation led them to more mirrors in the city, ones Amelia had never owned but which aligned along streets, apartments, and offices in subtle patterns. Each contained echoes, faint distortions where the watcher had passed or paused. Some even seemed to react when Lena or Marek approached, bending reflections or altering their angles. The city itself had become a labyrinth of portals. Mirrors were conduits, and someone, or something, was guarding them. It was then that Lena discovered the first human trace of what the watcher desired, hidden in a journal Amelia had left behind. The mirrors are not dangerous if you respect them, but they will guide you, or take you, depending on your understanding. The watcher sees through reflection. It tests you. It counts you. It is patient. It is inevitable. And if you break the sequence, it will not forgive. The meaning was clear. Amelia had tried to cross the mirror lattice. She had failed. Or perhaps she had succeeded in part, trapped somewhere between layers of reflection, awaiting someone who could follow her pattern without breaking it. Lena realized with a chill that they were no longer merely investigating a disappearance. They were participants in a structure older than the city itself, a network of reflections, observers, and perhaps even intelligence embedded within glass. Every mirror became suspect, every reflection a potential doorway, and the watcher, patient, luminous, silver-edged, had already taken notice of them. They were being tested. And if they misstepped, if they broke the sequence, Lena knew what could happen. They could vanish too, swallowed by the lattice of mirrors. Days later, Lena and Marek returned to the Montel apartments with a plan. Using every mirror in the building, every angle calculated with painstaking precision, they attempted to replicate the sequence Amelia had hinted at. The air shimmered. The temperature dropped. Faint whispers threaded through the hallways. And then the watcher appeared, not hostile, but measuring, weighing their understanding. Its silver edges flickered as it studied their movements, matching them against the reflection lattice's pattern. "You see now," it whispered, voice threading directly into thought. "You understand, or you will join her." Amelia's face appeared faintly in one of the mirrors, eyes wide, mouthing silently. "Follow the sequence." Lena swallowed her fear. Marek's hands shook. Together, they completed the steps. 1, 2, 3, across the hall. Each movement echoed in mirrored light, connecting nodes in a lattice they barely comprehended. A pulse ran through the building. Light bent and shimmered. For a single breath, the air in the apartment seemed to hold countless reflections of themselves, stretching and folding into infinity. Then, silence. Amelia was not returned. Not yet. But the watcher stepped back, leaving a faint ripple in the silvered hallway mirrors. A warning. An acknowledgement. Lena and Marek understood one thing. The mirrors were no longer static. They were alive, aware, and the watcher, patient, eternal, and silver-edged, was their first glimpse of a force older than the city, older than the vanished tenants, older than memory itself. The investigation had only just begun, and the lattice of reflections waited. The city woke to a heavy mist. It rolled over the Prague rooftops like a living thing, filling alleys and courtyards, curling through narrow streets. Visibility was low, street lamps dimmed, cars' headlights created halos, and pedestrians moved cautiously, their forms shadowed and ghost-like in the fog. Detective Lena Wojtek watched from the edge of Charles Bridge. Marek Horak was beside her, his coat damp from the persistent drizzle that had merged into the thick fog. "I've never seen anything like this," Marek murmured, his voice muffled by the dense air. "It's unnatural." Lena didn't answer at first. Her eyes scanned the riverbanks, the old buildings, the twisted spires of Prague's skyline emerging through the mist like a half-forgotten memory. Something about the fog unsettled her, not just the poor visibility, but the way it seemed directed. Shifting. Watching. They were following the mirror trail. Emilia Crowell had vanished days before, leaving behind a lattice of reflections, whispers, and faint disturbances in light. But the trail had never been linear. It was erratic, moving through the apartments, along narrow streets, across canals, and into old, abandoned warehouses. The watchers, the silver-edged presences in the mirrors, had been guiding them, testing them, and Lena was beginning to suspect the trail had an intelligence of its own. Now, the fog had become the latest obstacle. The first clue appeared in the reflected light on a canal surface. Lena squinted, lowering her flashlight toward the water. She saw shapes moving beneath the mist, distorted reflections of buildings, street lamps, and, briefly, a figure that did not belong. "Stop," she whispered, motioning Marek to halt. "There." He turned, catching only a flicker of something silver in the corner of his vision. By the time he focused, it was gone. Lena stepped closer to the edge of the canal, shining her flashlight along the water. There, just beneath the rippling surface, she saw a faint outline of a mirror. It floated horizontally, mid-air, suspended over the water as though gravity had forgotten it existed. The reflection in its surface did not match reality. It showed a narrow hallway from some building far away, perhaps one Emilia had been in, filled with shadows that moved independently of the fog outside. "It's a doorway," Lena breathed. "Or part of one." Marek swallowed hard. "You mean she's somewhere in that reflection?" "I don't know," Lena admitted. "But I do know the Watcher uses mirrors to move between spaces. This fog, it's hiding them, making it impossible for us to follow her linearly. It's masking the mirrors, masking the paths." They traced the mirrors along the river's edge. Each one appeared intermittently, a flicker in the fog, a distortion in a window, a patch of silver that bent the mist around it. The Watchers were always near, but never fully visible, shapes that shimmered, refracted light, never material, and yet undeniably intelligent. At one point, Lena stepped onto a small wooden dock. The fog thickened around her, coiling into her boots like cold fingers. She held up her flashlight. In the beam, a mirror appeared floating horizontally, just above the water. She leaned closer. The reflection was not the dock, not the canal, not the fog. It was an old apartment hallway she recognized from Emilia's journal, the Montel apartments. Lena's pulse quickened. She touched the surface. The mirror's edges rippled under her hand, faintly vibrating as though it were alive. A whisper drifted through the fog, soft but insistent. "Follow the pattern, or lose yourself." She jerked her hand back. Marek grabbed her sleeve. "What? What is it?" "I think it's guiding us," Lena said, her voice trembling slightly. "It's showing us where Emilia went. The Watcher, it's letting us see just enough to follow. But not too much. We have to read the sequence. The pattern. If we misstep." Marek swallowed. "We could vanish too." Lena didn't respond. She could feel the fog pressing in on them, heavier now, filled with subtle distortions. Every shadow in the mist seemed slightly off, as if reality itself were bending around the hidden mirrors. The next mirror appeared in a narrow alleyway, partially hidden behind a collapsed storefront. Lena recognized it immediately. The silver frame had intricate carvings, leaves, vines, tiny faces, like something from a forgotten museum. She knelt to inspect it. The reflection was wrong. It showed Marek standing beside her, but he wasn't there in reality. He was translucent, flickering in and out of phase with the fog. Lena realized with a jolt. The mirror wasn't reflecting the present. It was showing possible positions, echoes of their movements, perhaps even glimpses of where the Watcher wanted them to go. "This is it," she whispered. "This is the next step." Marek looked uneasy. "And if we follow it wrong?" Lena glanced at him, her eyes sharp. "We don't. That's the point. We have to move exactly as the reflection suggests. One misstep, and we're not just lost, we're taken." They continued, moving slowly, tracing the mirror's hidden path. The fog thickened further, making each step uncertain. Occasionally, Lena caught glimpses of the Watcher, a shimmer at the edge of a mirror, a silver distortion in a window, or a shadow that blinked in the corner of her eye. always observing, always testing. By midnight, they reached an abandoned theater at the edge of the old city. The marquee was missing letters, the doors hung crooked, and the fog swirled unnaturally inside the lobby. Lena held up her flashlight. In the beam, dozens of mirrors floated mid-air, arranged in an intricate, almost ceremonial pattern. They reflected each other endlessly, creating layers of reflections that bent the fog into geometric shapes. The Watcher appeared then, fully for the first time. Not entirely human, not entirely light, a slender figure outlined in silver, edges shimmering, shifting with each blink. Its face was featureless, smooth, except for two eyes that glowed faintly white. It did not speak aloud. But in Lena's mind, the message was clear. Proceed carefully. Follow the sequence, or remain lost forever. The first step through the theater mirrors was dizzying. Each mirror bent space subtly. Walking through one meant emerging in another hallway, or room that did not exist in the building. The fog seemed to pulse around them, guiding, obscuring, testing. Lena counted steps, matched reflections, mirrored her movements precisely. Marek followed, though he stumbled occasionally, and Lena had to correct him, guiding him through the shifting reflections. The Watcher moved alongside, observing, shifting its position to remain equidistant from them, ensuring the sequence was followed accurately. Time warped in the theater. Seconds stretched into minutes, minutes into an unmeasurable flow. Outside, the fog remained dense, pressing against the building's walls as though aware of the transgression occurring within. Finally, they reached a chamber at the theater's heart. Mirrors lined every wall, the ceiling, and even the floor. In the center floated a large, silver-framed mirror, the largest Lena had seen. Its surface shimmered violently, rippling like water in a storm. The Watcher gestured toward it. Lena understood. This was the next stage, perhaps the final one for tonight. She stepped closer, heart pounding. Marek followed. The reflection rippled, showing them not as they were, but as translucent versions, caught mid-motion in the sequence they had traced. One wrong step, one hesitation, and they would be lost inside the lattice of reflections, possibly joining Amelia in some state between worlds. Lena inhaled, steadying herself. She could feel the fog pressing against her mind now, whispering, tempting, disorienting. She mirrored the movement in the reflection exactly. Marek mirrored her. The Watcher flickered slightly, as though approving. The mirror surface then pulsed, expanding, folding the room into itself. Lena felt a tug, not physical but mental, pulling her forward. Marek gripped her hand tightly. The chamber's walls stretched infinitely, and for a heartbeat, they were neither in the theater nor the city. They were inside the lattice. Reflections extended in all directions, creating corridors of light and shadow. Each path led to another mirror, each mirror to another, and the fog that had concealed the path outside now existed inside as a thick, tangible presence. It pressed against their bodies, slowed their movements, whispered doubts, fears, and faint echoes of memories not their own. Lena realized the Watcher wasn't just observing. It was shaping the lattice, testing their resolve, ensuring they could navigate without succumbing to fear or error. At the heart of this labyrinth, they saw it, a faint silhouette moving beyond a series of layered mirrors. Amelia, pale, suspended mid-motion, her eyes wide, fixed on something unreachable. She wasn't speaking, but the image conveyed urgency. Hurry. Understand the pattern. The fog hides more than you know. Lena's mind raced. The fog was no longer merely a physical obstruction. It was a layer of the Watcher's test, a medium in which the lattice could obscure paths and guide those who followed correctly. She understood then that the Watcher's ultimate purpose was not cruelty. It was selection. It wanted those who could perceive, adapt, and respect the sequence to succeed, perhaps to continue the lattice's function, to maintain balance, or to survive. Marek whispered, voice trembling, I don't know if I can do this. You can, Lena said firmly. We have to. Follow me. One step at a time. Watch the reflections. Listen to the echoes. Don't break the pattern. The Watcher shimmered beside them, its silver edges bending the fog, guiding without touching. The lattice of mirrors extended endlessly, but Lena and Marek had learned to read it, to move with it, to respect it. Step by step, they followed the corridor, weaving between reflections, through the fog, closer to the heart of the lattice, and closer to Amelia. The fog that hides was not the enemy. It was the lesson. Somewhere, deep in the mirrored lattice, Lena knew, the Watcher waited. It would continue testing. And the fog, relentless and omnipresent, would always guard its secrets. But for the first time, Lena felt a sliver of hope. They were learning the rules. They were following the pattern. And they were not lost, not yet. The Watcher hovered beside them, a silver-edged figure reflecting the moonlight and fog. It did not speak aloud, but Lena felt its guidance in her mind. Each step across the mirror shards pulsed with subtle energy, aligning them with the lattice. The whispers continued, shaping the fog into patterns they could follow, not random, not chaotic, but deliberate. They moved slowly, carefully, stepping across shards, following reflections, synchronizing their actions with the lattice's rhythm. The river beneath them pulsed, guiding, testing, whispering. And then, they heard it, a new sound. Not the Watcher, not the fog, not the reflections. Something deeper, more resonant. A current within the river itself, a low, vibrating tone that harmonized with the lattice, as if the river were alive and speaking. The river, it's communicating, Lena breathed. It's part of the lattice, part of the Watcher's system. It's alive. Marek shivered. And dangerous. Yes, Lena said, but it's also showing us the way. Step by step, they followed the mirrored shards across the island, deeper into the river's heart. Each reflection revealed a new fragment of the path, a new echo of Amelia's movements. The lattice was alive, responsive, testing their perception, precision, and trust. Finally, they reached the far side of the island. The river narrowed into a hidden channel, fog curling over its surface like a cloak. At the channel's entrance floated a single, massive mirror, suspended above the water, shimmering violently. Its surface rippled, reflecting not the channel, not the fog, not the city, but an endless corridor of light, mirrors, and shadow, a corridor that seemed to fold in on itself. This is it, Lena whispered. The next stage. The river has guided us here. The Watcher has approved. Marek swallowed. And Amelia? She's inside, Lena said. Waiting. Watching. Guiding. We just have to follow the river and the lattice without breaking the pattern. The whispers rose in intensity, threading through the fog and water. The river hides, the path reveals. Do not break, do not hesitate. And for the first time, Lena understood. The river, the mirrors, the Watcher, the fog, all were connected. A single lattice, extending through water, glass, and air, guiding them toward Amelia, toward the heart of the mystery, and toward a force older than the city itself. They stepped forward together, into the mirrored surface, into the corridor beyond the river, into the unknown. The fog that hides had become the river that whispers, and Lena realized, every reflection, every ripple, every step was part of the Watcher's test. And the path ahead would demand more than courage. It would demand understanding, precision, and trust. The lattice awaited. The Watcher observed. And somewhere within the shimmering corridors of water and light, Amelia Crowell waited, guiding them onward. The fog had thinned slightly by the time Lena and Marek emerged from the mirrored corridor at the far side of the Vltava. The river flowed silently, dark and reflective, curling under the bridges that spanned its width. But beneath one of the oldest arches, the Czech Bridge, a Gothic structure lined with statues of saints and angels, Lena could feel a presence pulsing through the stone and water. They are here, Lena murmured. Her voice barely carried over the gentle lapping of the river. The Watcher's observers, beneath the bridge, watching us. Marek followed her gaze. The eyes. Yes, Lena said. I can feel them. Mirrors, reflections, and shards. Not the kind we see on walls. They are embedded. Eyes of the lattice. Observing. Judging. Testing. They approached the bridge carefully. From above, it looked empty, deserted in the early morning mist. But the lattice extended everywhere. Lena could feel its pulse in the stones beneath her boots, in the faint shimmer of water lapping against the pillars. Every shadow, every glint of silver in the river hinted at the Watcher's presence. She knelt at the edge of the riverbank and shone her flashlight along the arch supports. At first, there was nothing. Then, faint reflections appeared, almost imperceptible, like tiny silver eyes catching the light. They blinked in synchronization, following her movements, and Lena realized with a start, the lattice had expanded. The watcher had hidden observers, fragments of mirrors, reflective shards, or subtle distortions, in the very architecture of the bridge. "They're waiting for us to act," she whispered. "If we step wrong..." Marek swallowed. "We'll disappear, right? Or worse," Lena said. "We'll be trapped inside the lattice, just like Amelia." The first step across the underarch pathway was cautious. Stones jutted above the waterline, slippery with moss. Lena moved first, her eyes tracing the faint shimmer in the shadows beneath the bridge. Every step had to align precisely with the reflections in the lattice. One misstep could disrupt the watcher's pattern. Beneath the arches, the river rippled unnaturally. Lena could see faint silver shapes embedded in the water, mirrors or fragments aligned in impossible formations. Each reflected shards of other mirrors, creating a layered, infinite corridor beneath the bridge. The watcher's eyes were everywhere, embedded in water, stone, and the faint fog curling through the arches. Marek followed her cautiously, stepping where Lena guided him. The reflections below shimmered, rippling in response to their movements. "The lattice extends beyond walls," Lena murmured. "Beyond apartments, beyond streets. It's in everything. The water, the stone, even the air around us. The watcher sees all of it." They continued beneath the bridge, each movement synchronized with the silvered reflections. The whispers began again, faint at first, drifting across the arches. "Follow, align, do not falter, do not break." Lena focused, reading the patterns in the reflections. They moved across the stones like a dance, stepping carefully in sequence with the echoes of themselves in the mirrored fragments. The watcher's presence pressed against their minds, not hostile but intense, demanding precision. Halfway along the bridge, Lena saw a cluster of larger mirrors embedded in the stone. They reflected not the arches above but a hallway, familiar, yet impossible, filled with moving shadows. Lena realized these were glimpses of other lattice pathways, branching from the river beneath them, showing potential sequences they could follow. "Step lightly," she whispered to Marek. "This cluster, it's a test. One mistake, and the lattice could trap us here." The first cluster was the most treacherous. Shards floated mid-air, partially submerged in the water, refracting both the fog and the reflected arches. Lena could see echoes of herself and Marek moving ahead of their actual bodies, showing correct steps and sequences. "Follow the echoes," she said. "Every movement must align with them." Step by step, they moved, guided by the reflections. Occasionally, a shard rippled violently, sending pulses through the water. The whispers rose in intensity. "Align, observe, obey the sequence." For a heartbeat, Lena glimpsed the watcher itself, a slender silver figure hovering just above the waterline, edges shimmering, eyes faintly luminous. It was neither threatening nor kind, simply observing, ensuring the lattice's rules were followed. Marek froze for a moment, unnerved. Lena grasped his sleeve, steadying him. "Do not hesitate," she said firmly. "The watcher does not forgive mistakes." The next part of the river beneath the bridge was narrower, with jagged stones jutting from the water. Lena noticed a pattern in the reflections, a sequence of silver glints, like tiny eyes embedded in the lattice, each blinking in synchronization. She realized these were part of the watcher's monitoring system, each shard an observer, each blink a signal. "They see everything," she whispered. "Every step, every move, every hesitation." Marek shivered. "It's watching us right now." "Yes," Lena said, "and judging, but also guiding. If we follow the sequence, we survive. If we break it..." Her voice trailed off as she focused on the final stretch beneath the arches. Here, the river became a corridor of mirrors. The water shimmered with silver light, and the mist curling through the arches reflected not the present but the lattice's pathways. Lena could see hundreds of possibilities branching ahead, some leading to dead ends, others looping back, and one narrow path leading deeper into the lattice toward Amelia. The watcher's presence intensified. Its voice threaded directly into their minds. The eyes beneath the bridge see all. Move with intent. Follow the sequence, or remain lost forever. Lena nodded to Marek. "This is it. Step in time with the reflections. Trust the lattice." Step by step, they moved, aligning themselves with the echoes in the mirrored water. Each shard pulsed under their weight, guiding them. Occasionally, Lena felt a tug, subtle, like a pull in a magnetic field, aligning them closer with the sequence the watcher required. At the far end of the bridge, the river widened. Lena could see another large mirror partially submerged, shimmering violently. Its surface reflected a corridor of infinite mirrors, and inside that reflection, Amelia moved, pale, alert, and guiding them onward. "The next stage," Lena whispered. "The watcher wants us to cross it." We follow Amelia. "Step carefully. Do not break the sequence." Marek swallowed hard. "And if we fail?" Lena's eyes narrowed. "We don't. We follow the lattice. One step at a time. No hesitation." The whispers rose in intensity, threading through the arches and fog. "A line. Follow. Do not break. Do not falter." The watcher hovered above the water, edges shimmering, eyes luminous, observing every movement. It was patient, eternal, and unyielding. Lena and Marek stepped forward, crossing the final stretch beneath the bridge. The lattice pulsed with energy beneath their feet, in the water, and in the mist around them. Reflections rippled, guiding, testing, and revealing the path forward. At the end of the bridge, Lena saw Amelia clearly for the first time. She stood on a small stone platform near the riverbank, pale but composed, raising a hand toward the far end of the river, signaling them to continue. "The watcher has approved this stage," Lena whispered. "We made it across. The eyes beneath the bridge are satisfied." Marek exhaled, trembling. "That was insane." "Yes," Lena said, "but we're not done." The lattice continues. The river whispers, and Amelia is still ahead. We have to follow her, and the watcher, further into the mirror's heart. They paused briefly to catch their breath. Lena examined the shards beneath the water one last time. Each shimmer reflected corridors, hallways, and possibilities, but the sequence remained intact. The watcher's eyes, countless, scattered, vigilant, blinked once, then vanished into the mist. "The lattice adapts," Lena murmured. "It watches, guides, and tests. The river is just one part of it. The watcher is everywhere." Marek nodded. "And Amelia, she's still caught in it." "Yes," Lena said firmly. "But we're learning the rules. We're following the path. Step by step, we'll reach her, and we'll survive the lattice." The fog shifted around them, curling and twisting like a living thing, but Lena felt a surge of determination. The eyes beneath the bridge had tested them, and they had passed. Now, the path led onward, deeper into the lattice, toward the next stage of the sequence. The river had whispered its secrets. The watcher had observed, and the next chapter of their journey awaited. The air smelled of damp earth and stagnant water as Lena and Marek left the check bridge behind. The river behind them shimmered faintly under the morning fog, each ripple reflecting fragments of the lattice they had just crossed. The watcher's eyes beneath the bridge had disappeared, fading into the mist, leaving the echoes of their judgment behind. "We survived it," Marek muttered, wiping sweat from his brow. "But it felt wrong, like the bridge was just the beginning." Lena nodded. Her mind was already scanning the next stage. The lattice had a rhythm, a pulse that seemed to resonate with the city itself. Every mirror they had traced, every reflection they had followed, was part of a greater sequence, and that sequence had led them to this moment, the vanished path. She turned toward the narrow alley that led deeper into the old quarter. The fog lingered, twisting around corners and lamp posts like liquid smoke. Lena's instincts told her the lattice's next node was close. But as they walked, the alley seemed to stretch unnaturally, curving beyond the city's mapped streets. Shadows shifted where none should be. A familiar metallic tang hung in the air, the same scent they had felt in Amelia's apartment, in the abandoned theater, in the river beneath the bridge. "This alley, it doesn't exist," Marek whispered. "I've walked these streets 100 times. This corner isn't here." "Exactly," Lena said. "It's the vanished path. Part of the lattice that's hidden from the world. The watcher created it to conceal the next stage. We need to follow it carefully, or we'll be trapped." The vanished path was subtle at first. There were no mirrors on the walls, no shards in the water, nothing to indicate the lattice's presence. Yet Lena could feel it, a faint pulse beneath her boots, like the hum of electricity running through the stones. She reached out to touch a lamp post, and it flickered violently, reflecting a distorted image of the alley that should have been behind them. "See that?" Lena said, pointing. The lattice isn't always visible. Sometimes it hides entirely. We have to trust the pulse. Marek swallowed, his eyes wide. Trust what? There's nothing to see. That's the point, Lena replied. We move by feeling it, by reading the subtle distortions, the light, the shadows, the reflections in unexpected places. The vanished path reveals itself only to those who pay attention. They moved slowly, step by step. Each movement was deliberate, synchronized with the faint shifts in the alley's architecture. A crack in a brick, a glimmer on a puddle, a ripple in the fog, each indicated the next step. After several tense minutes, they reached a corner where the alley suddenly opened into a courtyard. The space was abandoned, filled with overgrown plants and broken statues. Yet in the center, a mirror floated, suspended mid-air, reflecting not the courtyard but a long hallway from the Montel apartments. That's impossible, Marek whispered. It's floating. Yes, Lena said, stepping closer. And it's the next node. We follow it, and the path continues. The mirror shimmered violently, reflecting her and Marek's movements before they actually moved. Lena realized this was another layer of the lattice. It not only guided them but also predicted their actions, offering corrections through subtle distortions in the reflection. She placed her hand on the surface. The mirror rippled like water, and the whispers began again, threading through the courtyard. Follow, step, do not break, align with the pattern. Marek hesitated. Lena grabbed his arm. Step carefully, she said. Follow the reflection. It's showing the correct sequence. They moved across the courtyard, stepping through the mirror's guidance. Each shot of reflection pulsed in response to their weight, bending the light around them and creating invisible corridors. The lattice was alive here, a fluid network of mirrors, reflections, and echoes. The vanished path had revealed itself, but it was treacherous. One wrong step could send them back to the beginning, or worse. As they progressed, Lena noticed faint shapes moving at the edges of her vision. Shadows that did not belong to her or Marek, figures shimmering in silver light. The Watcher's presence was close, but it did not intervene directly. It allowed them to navigate the vanished path on their own, testing their perception, their intuition, and their resolve. Midway through the courtyard, the alley behind them seemed to vanish entirely. Fog rolled in, thickening and twisting into shapes. Lena could see faint outlines of mirror shards embedded in the walls and floor, but they were unstable, flickering in and out of existence. This is it, she whispered. The vanished path is real. The lattice is showing its true form. We have to trust the echoes, not just our eyes. Marek nodded, following her lead. Every step was synchronized with the subtle shifts in light and shadow. The whispers grew louder, forming words now more clearly. Align, follow, sequence, do not hesitate, do not falter. They moved cautiously, navigating the unstable reflections. The lattice responded to their movements, pulsing gently underfoot, bending the fog and light to indicate the correct path. Each shard, each flicker of reflection, was a guide, but one misstep could unravel the sequence entirely. At the far end of the courtyard, they encountered a cluster of mirrors embedded in the walls. Each reflected not the courtyard, but a different corridor from the lattice, hallways, apartments, and streets they had passed before, distorted and rearranged. Lena realized the vanished path was a test. It required not just following the lattice but understanding its structure, predicting its shifts, and moving in harmony with its rhythm. We need to move in sequence, Lena said. Step by step, guided by the reflections. Do not rush. Do not hesitate. They began navigating the cluster. Shadows shimmered in the mirrors, showing potential missteps, false paths, and dead ends. The lattice's intelligence was evident. It adapted, responded, and tested their understanding. The Watcher observed from a distance, a silver-edged figure hovering just beyond the visible reflections. Suddenly, the largest mirror in the cluster pulsed violently, creating ripples that spread across the courtyard. Lena and Marek froze. The mirror's surface shimmered, reflecting an impossible corridor, a twisting, folding pathway that seemed to exist outside normal space. And within it, they saw Amelia, standing at the far end, pale but resolute, pointing toward the next segment of the lattice. That's our next step, Lena whispered. The Watcher is giving us permission to continue. We follow Amelia. Marek exhaled, trembling. And if we fail? We don't, Lena said firmly. We follow the lattice, one step at a time. The whispers rose in intensity, threading through the courtyard. Follow, align, sequence, do not falter, the path is revealed to those who see. The vanished path pulsed under their feet, the mirrors guiding, testing, and revealing. The watcher's eyes shimmered in the distance, observing but allowing them to progress. Step by step, they followed Amelia's guidance through the cluster of mirrors. Each reflection pulsed in response to their movements, bending light, fog, and shadow to indicate the correct sequence. The lattice extended beyond the courtyard, leading them toward a narrow alleyway that twisted unpredictably, disappearing into the fog. Lena realized that the vanished path was not merely hidden, it was alive. The lattice itself had adapted, creating a route that could only be traversed by those who understood its rhythm, who could interpret its subtle signals, and who could move without hesitation. Finally, they emerged from the vanished path into a small plaza. The fog thinned slightly, revealing the city beyond. The river shimmered in the distance, and the watcher's silver-edged figure hovered briefly above the water before disappearing into the mist. Amelia stood at the far end of the plaza, motionless, her eyes wide, beckoning them forward. Lena felt a surge of relief and determination. The vanished path had tested them, their perception, their precision, their resolve, and they had passed. But the journey was far from over. The lattice continued, extending through mirrors, reflections, and the very fabric of the city. The watcher remained, patient, observing, and guiding. And somewhere ahead, Amelia awaited, trapped within the heart of the mirror network. Lena turned to Marek. We're close. The path is opening. But we have to remain focused. One misstep, one hesitation, and we could be lost forever. Marek nodded, swallowing hard. I understand. Let's finish this. The city had fallen into an unnatural stillness. Even the river, which had guided them across the vanished path, now seemed to hold its breath. The fog, once a whispering companion, had become heavier, curling into the streets and alleyways in slow, deliberate spirals. Lena and Marek stepped cautiously through the quiet plaza, every footfall absorbed by the damp cobblestones, every sound swallowed by the dense mist. Ahead of them lay the next stage of the lattice, the silent crossing. It was a stretch of water and broken streets, a place where the reflections and the watcher's eyes would demand more than observation. It required perfect coordination, absolute trust, and unwavering focus. This crossing, Lena murmured, her eyes scanning the mist. The lattice will challenge us here like never before. One misstep, one hesitation, and we could vanish entirely. Marek nodded, but his hands trembled slightly. And Amelia, she's still ahead. She's guiding us, Lena replied. And we have to follow her. Every move must align with the reflections. The silent crossing began with a narrow footpath leading to a half-collapsed bridge that spanned a side channel of the river. Broken beams jutted into the water like jagged teeth, each one slick with rain and moss. Lena knelt at the first beam, inspecting the surface. Beneath her, the water shimmered unnaturally, reflecting corridors and staircases from other places, fragments of apartments, alleyways, and theaters. The lattice had embedded itself into the channel. See the reflections? Lena whispered. The path isn't just physical. It's in the water, the air, and the mist. We step by the reflections, not the stones. Marek swallowed hard. This is insane. How are we supposed to? Trust it, Lena interrupted. Trust the lattice. And trust me. The first step was delicate. Lena placed her boot on the beam, aligning it with the shimmer in the water below. The reflection pulsed in response, bending light into subtle lines that indicated the correct sequence. Marek followed, matching her movements exactly. A wrong step now could fracture the sequence and trap them in a mirror fragment forever. The watcher hovered above the crossing, silver-edged and silent, observing every motion. Its eyes, innumerable, luminous fragments, reflected not just the city but the lattice itself, tracking every micro-movement. Step lightly, Lena whispered. Do not rush. Do not hesitate. Marek nodded, biting his lip. Step by step, they advanced, guided by the reflections and the whispers of the lattice. Halfway across the crossing, the river beneath them pulsed with subtle energy. Shards of mirrors floated just above the surface, flickering like fireflies in the mist. Lena recognized the pattern immediately. The lattice was testing synchronization. Each shard reflected both her and Marek's movements, highlighting deviations and correcting alignment. "Look," she whispered. "The reflections are moving ahead of us, predicting our steps. We follow them exactly." Marek's hands shook, but he mirrored her movements carefully. Lena could feel the fog pressing closer, coiling around them, thickening with each step. The whispers grew louder, threading through the mist. "Align, step, follow, do not break, do not falter." She felt the Watcher's presence like a weight on her shoulders, patient, unwavering, demanding perfection. The middle section of the crossing was the most treacherous. Broken beams twisted in impossible angles, some submerged in the water, others suspended above the channel like invisible staircases. The reflections rippled in the water, revealing safe sequences amidst an array of false paths. "This part is tricky," Lena said softly. "Move only when the reflection pulses. One misstep, and we could be lost." They advanced slowly, step by step, the lattice pulsing under their feet, bending fog and water into patterns that guided them forward. Shadows flickered at the edges of their vision, fragments of Watcher's eyes, silvered shards hovering in the mist, each observing, each waiting for an error. Marek faltered, slipping slightly on a moss-covered beam. Lena grabbed his arm instantly, steadying him. "Trust the reflection," she whispered. "Follow the lattice. One step at a time." The final section of the silent crossing was the narrowest, a span of shattered planks hovering above a deep pool of water. Beneath the surface, the lattice shimmered violently, reflecting corridors that twisted and folded, creating impossible geometry. Lena could see Amelia at the far end, pale but resolute, beckoning them forward. "This is it," Lena whispered. "We have to cross perfectly. The Watcher is observing every move." The whispers intensified. "Align, follow, sequence, do not break, do not falter, the path is revealed to those who see." The water below pulsed in synchrony with the lattice, the reflections bending and stretching to guide them. Lena stepped first, synchronizing her movements with the shimmering paths. Marek followed, matching her exactly. Each step was a test, every breath measured, every motion deliberate. The Watcher's silver figure hovered above, reflecting the river, the fog, and the lattice in countless fragments. Halfway across the narrow span, the lattice pulsed violently. The fog thickened, curling around their bodies like living fingers. Lena's foot slipped slightly, and for a heartbeat, the reflection rippled as if warning her. She adjusted instantly, regaining balance. Marek froze for a moment, fear overtaking him. Lena grabbed his hand firmly. "Move with me," she whispered. "Trust the sequence. Trust the lattice." They continued, step by step, until they reached the far end. The silent crossing ended in a small platform of cobblestones, slightly elevated above the water. The river's surface shimmered violently, then settled, reflecting the moonlight and fog in gentle ripples. Amelia was there, waiting. Her eyes were wide, and she raised her hand toward the next segment of the lattice. Lena understood instantly. The Watcher's test was complete for this stage. The silent crossing had been more than physical. It was a test of perception, precision, and trust. Every shard, every reflection, every ripple of water and fog had been a node in the lattice, guiding, correcting, and testing. The Watcher had observed without intervening, ensuring that Lena and Marek could navigate the path correctly. "We made it," Lena whispered, exhaling. "The crossing is behind us, but the lattice continues." Marek nodded, still trembling. I can't believe we survived that. I thought we'd fall into the water, or worse." "We followed the lattice," Lena said firmly. "Step by step, exactly as it instructed." The Watcher approved. They paused briefly to recover. Lena examined the reflections in the water, the fog curling around the platform, and the distant silver shimmer where the Watcher had hovered. The lattice continued to pulse faintly, guiding them toward the next stage. Amelia's silhouette in the mist beckoned them onward, and Lena felt a surge of determination. "The Watcher's tests are getting harder," she said, "but we're learning the rules. Step by step, reflection by reflection, we'll reach her." Marek glanced at her, and the Watcher, it's still observing. "Yes," Lena said, "always, but it doesn't intervene unless we break the sequence." That's why precision matters more than speed. The silent crossing was the first true test of synchronization, and we passed. Beyond the platform, the alleyways twisted unpredictably. The lattice pulsed faintly, shimmering through fragments of mirrors embedded in walls, windows, and even the fog itself. Lena and Marek moved cautiously, guided by Amelia's distant figure and the subtle signals of the lattice. Each step was deliberate. Shadows flickered at the edges of perception, silvered shards hovered in corners, and the whispers threaded through the fog. Align, follow, sequence, observe, proceed. Do not falter. The silent crossing had prepared them for the next stage. The lattice had tested their perception, coordination, and trust, and they had passed. Now, the path forward required more than courage. It demanded understanding, awareness, and the ability to navigate the infinite reflections of the Watcher's design. Finally, they reached the far side of the silent crossing, a small courtyard illuminated faintly by the reflections in the water. The fog began to thin, revealing the city beyond and the next segment of the lattice. Lena could see Amelia standing near a cluster of mirrors, pale but determined, guiding them onward. The silent crossing is behind us, Lena said. But the lattice continues, and the Watcher's presence remains. Step carefully, Marek. Every movement matters. Marek nodded, exhaling. I understand. Let's keep moving. The river behind them shimmered faintly, reflecting fragments of the crossing they had survived. The Watcher's silver figure lingered briefly, observing, before disappearing into the mist. The lattice pulsed faintly beneath the cobblestones, leading them toward the next stage, deeper into the heart of the mirrors. The fog thinned as Lena and Marek emerged from the silent crossing, leaving the cobblestones and mirrors behind. Beyond the narrow streets of the old quarter lay the pack, a small, overgrown grove known to locals as the Whispering Trees. At first glance, it was unremarkable: twisted trunks, gnarled branches, and the faint rustle of leaves in the wind. But Lena already sensed the lattice's presence. The Watcher's extending its reach again, Lena murmured, scanning the grove. These trees, they are part of the network. Marek shivered. Trees? Really? How can leaves be part of the lattice? Everything can be, Lena said. Fog, water, stone, and now wood. Look closer. The grove was filled with subtle distortions. Branches arched unnaturally, forming shapes that shouldn't exist. Bark glimmered in places, reflecting glimpses of corridors, staircases, and fragments of mirrors they had traversed before. The lattice had embedded itself into the environment itself, and the Whispering Trees were its latest node. Lena knelt beside the roots of one tree. Moss covered a portion of the ground, but when she brushed it aside, silvered shards of mirror were embedded beneath. Light reflected off them in ripples, bending the mist into patterns. She traced the pulse through her fingertips. The reflections, they are guiding us again, she whispered. But the lattice is different here. It's more organic. Shifting, growing. We have to pay attention. Marek peered into the roots. I don't understand. How do we move through trees? Step where the lattice guides us, Lena said. The reflections in the shards will indicate the correct sequence. The trees whisper the path. They stepped cautiously into the grove. The fog weaved around the trunks and branches, curling like living fingers. Each step Lena took caused subtle ripples in the reflections embedded in the roots, guiding the next move. Marek followed, trying to mimic her movements precisely. Whispers filled the air, faint at first, drifting from branch to branch. Step, align, do not falter, the sequence continues, follow. It was as if the trees themselves spoke, their voices carried not through air but through the lattice. Each rustle of leaves was part of the code, each shadow a node in the network. The Watcher's presence is stronger here, Lena murmured. It wants us to interpret the whispers, to read the forest, not just the reflections. Marek's breath came in short gasps. This is insane. I can feel them, watching, everywhere. Yes, Lena said, and we have to move carefully. One wrong step, one hesitation, and the lattice will punish us. The first obstacle was a fallen tree trunk, partially suspended above a shallow ditch. The back reflected faintly, showing a corridor from the Montel apartments. Lena realized instantly that the lattice had imposed its own geometry onto the grove. Reflections indicated where to place each foot, guiding them through the impossible angles of the forest floor. Follow the reflections, she instructed. They are showing the correct alignment. Do not trust your eyes alone. Step by step, Lena crossed the trunk, Marek following exactly in her footsteps. Beneath them, the mirrored shards pulsed, bending the mist to indicate the sequence. Shadows of silver eyes glimmered in the corners of the grove, watching, observing, testing their precision. Halfway across, a branch quivered violently. The reflection below pulsed, signaling a correction in their movement. Lena adjusted her balance instinctively, guiding Marek as he followed. The Watcher adapts here, Lena said softly. The trees are alive with the lattice. They respond to hesitation, to error. Stay focused. Beyond the fallen trunk, the grove narrowed into a corridor of tightly packed trees. Fog swirled between the trunks, forming shapes that flickered like phantom corridors. Lena noticed silvered shards embedded in the back, reflecting reflections of the past, corridors, alleyways, and bridges they had traversed. The lattice was teaching them to recognize patterns, to see beyond immediate obstacles. Marek moved cautiously, tracing each step by the reflections. The whispers grew louder, threading through the branches. Align, follow, sequence, do not falter, the path is shown to those who see. Lena paused to observe. A branch overhead shimmered, reflecting a sequence they had to follow. She gestured to Marek. Step in order, she said. Branch, root, shard, mirror, follow the rhythm of the lattice. He nodded, placing his foot carefully on the indicated route. The shard pulsed, and the fog shifted, revealing a faint path through the twisted trees. The center of the grove was a circular clearing. Moonlight filtered through the branches, falling on a shallow pool of water. Silver shards floated on its surface, reflecting fragments of corridors and doorways they had yet to traverse. Lena realized this was the heart of the whispering trees, a nexus of the lattice, where multiple nodes converged. The Watcher has concentrated the lattice here, she whispered. This pool, it's a central node. Every reflection, every ripple, indicates the next stage. Marek knelt beside the pool, peering into the water. It's moving. Shapes shift as we look. How do we follow that? By anticipating, Lena said. The lattice shows possibilities. We align ourselves with the correct one. Watch Amelia, she's guiding us. Within the pool's reflections, Amelia appeared, pale but resolute, signaling the next step. Lena's heart raced. The Watcher's tests had grown more complex, but they were following the sequence correctly. The final segment of the grove involved crossing a series of routes, partially submerged in the shallow water. Each route had silver shards embedded in its surface, pulsating with subtle energy. The fog swirled around them, bending reflections into impossible geometries. Step lightly, Lena whispered. Follow the rhythm. Trust the lattice. Do not hesitate. Step by step, they navigated the routes. Each shard reflected not only their current movements but potential missteps, showing the safest path forward. Shadows flickered at the edges of perception, fragments of Watcher's eyes, observing, ready to punish error. Marek faltered slightly. Lena grabbed his arm, steadying him. Focus, she said. The lattice corrects us if we align properly. Move with it, not against it. They continued, each step synchronized with the pulses in the shards. The whispers intensified. Align, follow, sequence. Do not break, do not falter. Finally, they reached the far side of the grove. The trees thinned, revealing a narrow alley that led toward the next stage of the lattice. The fog lifted slightly, but the Watcher's presence remained, a silver-edged figure hovering in the distance, observing, judging, and guiding. Amelia stood near the alley's entrance, motionless, signaling them onward. Lena felt a surge of relief. The whispering trees had tested them, their perception, intuition, and coordination, and they had passed. The lattice continues, Lena said, exhaling. We survived the whispering trees. But we must remain vigilant. The Watcher is still observing, and the next stage will be harder. Marek nodded, swallowing hard. I don't know how much more of this I can take. But we have to keep moving. For Amelia. Yes, Lena said firmly. Step by step, reflection by reflection, we'll reach her, and we'll survive the lattice. The alley beyond the whispering trees opened into a quiet, crumbling street. Faded bricks leaned in uneven rows, and the faint hum of the lattice pulsed beneath Lena's boots. The watcher's presence had never been more insistent, not hovering, not flashing, but a constant pressure in the air, a silent weight pressing against their minds. "This is the street," Lena whispered. "The next node. The tenant's legacy." Marek glanced around nervously. "Legacy? What does that mean? I've been in this neighborhood before, but I don't remember anything like this." "The lattice hides more than just paths," Lena explained. "It archives its history. Every sequence, every misstep, every person caught inside, the reflections remember them. The tenant's legacy is one of the oldest nodes, embedded with memories, echoes of the past, and the watcher uses them to test us." They moved cautiously down the street. Windows reflected not their current movements but ghostly echoes of previous tenants, people they had never met, yet whose reflections mirrored human routines, cooking, reading, opening doors, and sometimes vanishing into mirrors that flickered like open wounds in the walls. "Do you see that?" Lena said, pointing. "These are the echoes. The lattice stores them. The watcher uses their movements to teach, warn, or trap." Marek swallowed hard. "Trap?" "Yes," Lena said. "We have to move precisely, in step with these echoes. One wrong alignment, and the lattice could claim us as part of the legacy." She led Marek down a narrow pathway between two tall buildings. The fog from the whispering trees lingered, curling through the windows and alleys, twisting into shapes that seemed almost sentient. Silvered shards of mirrors were embedded in the brick walls, each reflecting distorted sequences, echoes of past tenants who had lived and vanished here. The first test of the tenant's legacy was subtle. A window on the left reflected Lena's movements slightly ahead of time, shimmering like liquid silver. She understood instantly. The lattice required anticipation, not just reaction. "Step in sequence," Lena whispered. "The echoes are ahead of us. Move as they move." Marek hesitated. "But they are not real. How can I step with ghosts?" "They are real," Lena said firmly. "To the lattice, they are. To the watcher, they are instructions. Follow exactly, and we survive. Step wrong, and we become part of the legacy ourselves." Step by step, Lena navigated the path, moving in perfect synchronization with the ghostly echoes reflected in windows, puddles, and shards embedded in walls. Marek mirrored her cautiously, eyes wide, fingers trembling. The whispers began again, soft at first. "Align, follow, sequence, observe. Do not break, do not falter." Halfway down the street, the reflections became more complex. Echoes overlapped, a tenant moving left in one window, right in another, a shadow vanishing into a shard embedded in the doorway, glimpses of staircases folding into corridors that didn't exist in reality. Lena recognized the pattern immediately. The lattice was creating false sequences, designed to mislead, to test their perception. "Ignore the false paths," she whispered. "Trust only the ones that pulse with silver light. Those are real nodes. Everything else is a test." Marek nodded, his face pale. "Okay, follow the silver, got it." The pulses were faint, subtle, but consistent. Step by step, they avoided the traps, moving through the shifting echoes, the whispering windows, and the distorted corridors. The lattice was alive here, recording each decision, reacting to hesitation, adapting the sequence in real time. The central courtyard of the apartment block, long abandoned, was the heart of the tenant's legacy. Broken balconies, twisted metal railings, and shattered glass littered the floor. In the center, a massive mirror leaned against a wall, partially cracked, reflecting not the courtyard but a sequence of hallways, staircases, and rooms from the building's past. Lena recognized one immediately. It was the apartment where the first missing tenant had vanished. "This is it," she whispered. "The heart of the node. The watcher will test us here, using the legacy. One wrong step, and we could become a memory inside the mirror." Marek's hand shook as he reached for her arm. I think I understand why they call it a legacy." "Yes," Lena said. "The lattice doesn't forget. Every tenant, every sequence, every failure, it's stored here. We're walking through history, through lives the lattice has claimed. And we have to navigate it perfectly." They stepped toward the mirror carefully. The surface shimmered like water, and Lena could see multiple versions of themselves, reflections that moved slightly out of sync, testing which paths were correct. The watcher's presence pressed against their minds, a constant reminder that they were being observed. "Follow the echoes," Lena said. "Step exactly where they step." The pulse in the mirror shows the correct sequence. Step by step, Lena and Marek moved, navigating the mirror's complex reflections. Shadows flickered around them, fragments of silver eyes embedded in shards, observing, recording, waiting. The whispers grew louder. Align, follow, sequence, observe. Do not break, do not falter. The path is revealed to those who see. Halfway through the sequence, Lena noticed a new element, a reflection of Amelia, faint and distant, trapped in a corridor of mirrors that twisted impossibly. She was pale, but focused, signaling the correct path through the mirrored labyrinth. "We follow Amelia," Lena whispered. "She's our guide. One wrong step, and the lattice could trap us here forever." The reflections shifted as they moved, creating impossible geometries. Staircases folding into hallways, doors opening into corridors that twisted back on themselves. Each step required anticipation, focus, and perfect alignment with both the echoes of past tenants and the pulses in the mirrors. Marek faltered on a staircase reflection, nearly stepping into a distorted corridor. Lena grabbed his arm instantly. "Move with the pulse," she whispered. "The reflections correct us if we follow carefully. Do not rush." They continued, step by step, navigating through echoes of apartments past. Every reflection was a test, every shot a node in the lattice. The watcher observed silently, its silver edges glimmering faintly in the corner of their vision. Finally, they reached the final segment of the tenant's legacy, the top floor of the abandoned block. Here, the lattice's pulse was strongest. Shards floated mid-air, forming a corridor of reflections that twisted reality itself. Lena realized that this final test was not about physical steps but perception. They had to interpret the reflections, predict the shifts, and move in perfect harmony with the lattice. "Focus," Lena whispered. "The watcher is testing our understanding of the sequence, not just our feet." Step by step, they moved through the corridor of shards. Each shard pulsed in response to their movements, bending the reflections to guide them. Shadows flickered around the edges, fragments of watcher's eyes embedded in shards, tracking every micro-movement. Marek's hand trembled. I can't tell which way is real anymore." "Trust the pulse," Lena said. "Trust Amelia. Step by step, and we'll survive." The final shard corridor ended at a cracked window overlooking the city. Beyond it, the river shimmered faintly in the distance, and fog drifted through the streets like smoke. Amelia stood on a balcony across the way, pale but composed, raising her hand to signal the final step. "The watcher has approved this stage," Lena whispered. "We've navigated the tenant's legacy." Marek exhaled, his body trembling. "We made it? After all of that?" "Yes," Lena said. "We followed the echoes, interpreted the reflections, and aligned with the pulse. The lattice has recorded our success. But we're not done. The final node awaits. Amelia is still ahead, and the watcher is still observing." The apartment block's courtyard, filled with silvered shards and shifting reflections, fell silent. The echoes of past tenants flickered one last time, fading into the mist. The whispers softened. "Align, follow, sequence. The path continues. The legacy lives in those who see." Lena looked at Marek. "We've survived the tenant's legacy. The watcher is still present, still observing, but we've proven ourselves. The final stage is near." Marek nodded, though his hands still shook. "I don't know if I can do much more of this, but we have to keep going. For Amelia." "Yes," Lena said firmly. "One step at a time. Reflection by reflection. Sequence by sequence. We will reach her, and we will survive the lattice." The city had grown still, almost unnaturally quiet, as Lena and Marek emerged from the narrow alley beyond the tenant's legacy. The fog lingered, thick and silvered, curling around broken lampposts and abandoned storefronts. The lattice's pulse was stronger here than ever before, thrumming through the cobblestones and seeping into the very air around them. This is it," Lena whispered, her voice tight with anticipation. "The watcher's final node. The final observation." Marek swallowed, his eyes wide as he scanned the empty streets. "Final observation. What does that even mean?" "It means everything we've done has led here," Lena said. Every step, every reflection, every echo of the past, the watcher is recording, judging, observing. And now it will decide if we reach Amelia or become part of the lattice ourselves. The mist parted just enough to reveal the structure ahead, a massive, crumbling observation tower rising from the center of the city. Its windows gleamed with fragments of silvered mirrors, reflecting impossible geometries. Corridors folded into staircases, rooftops intersecting alleyways, and ghostly echoes of every sequence they had traversed. At the tower's apex, a single window pulsed with energy, Amelia's faint silhouette inside. They approached cautiously. The cobblestones beneath their feet pulsed in rhythm with the lattice. Shards of mirrors floated at irregular intervals, reflecting paths that were real and paths that were traps. Lena recognized the patterns immediately. The final observation demanded perfect alignment, perfect perception, and absolute trust in the lattice. The watcher will test every skill we've learned, Lena murmured. Mirrors, echoes, reflections, all combined. Step carefully, Marek. He nodded, gripping her hand tightly. I'll try. I don't know if I can do more, but I'll follow you. Lena smiled briefly, though her heart raced. Step by step, sequence by sequence, we'll reach her. The first segment of the tower's approach involved navigating a series of broken rooftops. The fog wrapped around them like liquid smoke, bending light and reflections to create illusions of depth and distance. Shards of silvered mirrors floated above the rooftops, each reflecting multiple versions of themselves, projecting paths that overlapped and twisted. Step where the reflection pulses, Lena instructed. Ignore the false paths. Trust the lattice's guidance. Marek hesitated, staring at a reflection that split into two identical sequences. Which one is real? The one that pulses, Lena replied firmly. Always follow the pulse. It corrects hesitation and predicts missteps. Step by step, they advanced, hopping from rooftop to rooftop. The watcher's presence pressed against them like a tangible force, observing their every movement. Each pulse of the lattice reinforced the path, bending fog, light, and reflection to guide them, while the whispers returned, threading through the air like soft steel. Observe, align, follow, do not falter, the path is revealed to those who see. At the midpoint, the rooftops gave way to a shattered bridge of glass panels hovering above the city streets. The shards reflected distorted versions of the buildings below, fractured echoes of the lattice's earlier sequences. Lena understood instantly. The final observation was a culmination. It tested memory, perception, precision, and the ability to synthesize every lesson they had learned. Step lightly, Lena whispered. Every shard is a node. The reflections correct missteps, but only if we move perfectly. One wrong step. Yeah, I know, Marek muttered, his jaw tight. We fall or vanish. Yes, Lena said. Follow the pulse. Focus. They moved in unison, footstep by footstep, across the fractured glass. Shards pulsed in silver light, bending reflections to indicate the correct sequence. Shadows flickered at the edges, fragments of watchers' eyes embedded in shards, observing, recording, judging every micro-movement. Marek faltered, his weight shifting dangerously. Lena grabbed his arm instantly, steadying him. Trust the pulse, she whispered. Step exactly as the reflections show. Beyond the glass bridge, they reached the tower's first interior node, a hallway lined with mirrors from floor to ceiling. Each reflection projected not only themselves but echoes of past tenants, of corridors, rooftops, and sequences from the silent crossing, the whispering trees, and the tenant's legacy. The watcher had consolidated every test, every memory, into a single, overwhelming challenge. This is insane, Marek whispered. I can't tell what's real anymore. That's the point, Lena said. Perception is the test now. Memory, precision, intuition, every skill we've learned is required here. Step with the reflections, anticipate the shifts, trust the lattice. The whispers intensified, threading through the mirrors. Align, observe, sequence, integrate. Do not break, do not falter, the path continues to those who see. Step by step, Lena and Marek advanced. Each shard pulsed with subtle energy, guiding movements, correcting hesitation, highlighting safe nodes amidst a labyrinth of reflections and echoes. The watcher's presence pressed against them constantly, a silent force demanding perfection. Midway through the corridor, Lena noticed a faint shimmer in one of the mirrors, Emilia, distant but clear, signaling a sequence they had to follow. Her figure pulsed in sync with the lattice, indicating the correct steps through the hall of infinite reflections. "There," Lena whispered. "Follow Emilia. She's guiding the final sequence." Marek nodded, his face pale. I see her. Okay, we can do this." Step by step, they synchronized their movements with Emilia's pulses, the mirrored reflections bending light and fog to guide them. Shadows flickered, false paths, echoes of past tenants, twisted corridors, but the pulse corrected their alignment instantly, keeping them on course. The corridor opened into a vast chamber at the tower's apex. Windows reflected the city below, fractured by shards of mirror that hovered in mid-air. The lattice pulsed violently, wrapping the room in shifting geometries and impossible angles. Lena realized this was the core of the final observation, a convergence of all nodes, all lessons, all tests. "The Watcher's strongest here," Lena whispered. "Every misstep will be amplified. Every hesitation, observed. We must move perfectly." Marek swallowed hard, gripping her hand. I trust you. Let's finish this." The chamber's floor was covered in silvered shards, each reflecting corridors, rooftops, forests, and sequences they had navigated before. Step by step, they moved, following the pulses in the shards, integrating every reflection and echo they had encountered. The whispers grew louder, now layered and complex, threading through the chamber. Align, integrate, sequence, observe, trust the lattice, do not falter, the path is revealed to those who see. At the chamber's center, a massive mirror hovered, larger than any they had seen. Its surface rippled like water, reflecting not just the room but infinite variations of the city, the sequences they had traversed, and their own reflections multiplied endlessly. Emilia stood inside the mirror, pale but determined, signaling them toward the final step. "This is it," Lena whispered. "The final node. The last observation. Step perfectly, and we reach her." Step by step, Lena and Marek advanced. Each movement required anticipation, alignment, and perfect synchronization with the mirror's pulses. The Watcher's silver figure hovered at the edges, observing, judging, testing, waiting for a misstep. Marek faltered briefly, eyes wide with fear. Lena grabbed his arm, whispering, "Focus. Step exactly with the pulse. One misstep and it ends." The mirror pulsed violently as they neared the final step. The floor shards aligned perfectly, the reflections bending in perfect harmony with their movements. The whispers crescendoed. "Observe, integrate, sequence, align, do not break, do not falter, reach." The observer grants passage to those who see. Step by step, Lena led Marek to the mirror's edge. The surface shimmered violently, then parted like liquid, revealing a corridor of silvered light leading directly to Emilia. She reached out, her hand trembling but resolute. Lena took her hand first, Marek following. The pulses of the lattice enveloped them, bending reflections, fog, and light into a seamless path. Step by step, they moved into the corridor, guided entirely by the mirror's rhythm. Finally, they emerged on the other side. The tower's apex opened onto a balcony bathed in silver light. Emilia stood there, real and solid, no longer a reflection. Lena exhaled, relief flooding her. We made it," Marek whispered, still trembling. She's here." "Yes," Lena said. "The final observation tested everything we've learned. Perception, precision, anticipation, trust. And we passed. The lattice has granted us passage." The Watcher's silver-edged figure appeared one last time, hovering above the balcony. Its presence was serene now, no longer pressing, no longer threatening. It observed, acknowledged their success, then faded into the mist, leaving only the faint pulse of the lattice behind. Emilia stepped forward, embracing Lena and Marek. "You made it," she whispered. "I knew you would." Lena looked out over the city below, the fog curling through the streets, the river shimmering faintly in the distance. The lattice had tested them, twisted them, and reshaped their perception of reality, but they had survived. Together, they had passed the final observation. The final observation had ended. The lattice's pulse lingered faintly, but the city seemed to breathe again, quiet and real. Reflections shimmered in windows and puddles, but no longer twisted impossibly. The watcher had withdrawn, its lessons complete. Lena turned to Marek. We're free, for now. The lattice remains, yes, but its final test has ended. We've proven ourselves. Marek nodded, a faint smile breaking through his exhaustion. And Amelia, she's safe. Yes, Lena said firmly. Together, we survived. The reflections, the echoes, the watches, they taught us everything we needed to know. And we made it through.